Regular meeting of the Arvada Housing Authority for July 18th, 2022. And Ms. Rush, if you could do the roll call, please.
Chairman Williams.
Here.
Vice Chairman Jones.
Here.
Commissioner Pfeiffer.
Here.
Commissioner Marriott.
Here.
Commissioner Mormon.
Here.
Commissioner Simpson.
Here.
Commissioner Smith.
Here.
Thank you very much. So now we'll have the reading and approval of the meeting minutes for the regular meeting of July 19th, 2021. Would anybody like to read those minutes or approve them as presented?
I motion to approve as presented.
We have a motion to approve as presented. Let me start voting. Bob. And Mr. Mayor, how do you vote?
Aye.
So those minutes are approved with a vote of 7-0. So now, do we have any reports from the Secretary? No reports from the Secretary. Any reports from committees? No. Any unfinished business?
Your Honor,
Yes.
we have the public comment period at
Oh,
number 4.
You're right. So let's rewind. I apologize. Is there anyone here that would wish to speak during public comment portion of this? This is for the Arvada Housing Authority. Is that for the Arvada Housing Authority, those hands? Okay, no. Great. So seeing none, I will...
And then, Your Honor, we also, during the public comment period, we open up the public hearing for the Arvada Housing Authority Administrative Plan Revision. So you'll just ask if anyone has any comment related to that.
Okay. This is my first one. So, just to be clear, so we need to open up a public hearing for, tell me again.
For the, it's the item just underneath public comment, and it says public
Got it.
hearing for Arvada Housing Authority Administrative Plan Revision. So you'll just
Thanks.
ask if there's any public, any comment or testimony that people want to give specifically related to the administrative plan revisions. You don't have to swear anyone in or anything like that. We're
Perfect.
just seeking comment related to that.
Wonderful. So we'll open up the public comment for the public hearing for the Arvada Housing Authority Administrative Plan Review, Plan Revisions. Anyone in the public wish to speak to that? Seeing none, I'll close the public comment portion of that hearing. Anything else, Ms. Morris, that we need to do with respect to that?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you, and thank you for the help. So now, we have no reports from our secretary, we have no reports from committees, there is no unfinished business. So with that, we have some new business items that I'll turn the time over to Carrie Espinoza for those two items.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. The first item on the agenda is the Arvada Housing Authority Annual Report. And this report highlights the accomplishments of the Housing Authority from July of 2021 through June of 2022. Before I dive into the report, I first want to acknowledge the work of Dina Cody, our Housing Choice Voucher Program Supervisor, and the work of Adele Burton, the City's Special Events Coordinator, in their creation of this report. Dina compiled the data, and Adele took that data and created an amazing report that you'll see before you this evening. So a big thank you to both Dina and Adele. The Arvada Housing Authority had yet another successful year, and I would briefly like to highlight a few of the Housing Authority's accomplishments. Next slide, please. The Housing Authority provided housing to 433 households in 2021 and 2022. The total amount of rental assistance paid to landlords was just over $5.7 million. 42% of households are elderly, and 55% of the households in the program are persons with disabilities. We are touching households in the community with very limited income, so we are very proud to be providing that resource to them. The Housing Authority opened its waiting list for applications in October of 2021, and we received a total of 963 applications in that one-day period. We approximately have about 800 households on the waiting list as of today. Next slide, please. We continue to explore ways in which to improve services. We improved our services this past year by include offering a direct deposit option for landlords who wish to receive electronic payment of rental assistance, and we now have over 50% of our landlords receiving payment via direct deposit. We are offering hybrid options for our program participants to include virtual options for housing orientations and other meetings, and within the next year or so, we will roll out an online recertification portal that will streamline the paperwork process for our participants. Next slide, please. In regards to addressing homelessness in Arvada, the Housing Authority is pleased to report that 34 people who are homeless or at risk of homelessness are now stably housed using one of our mainstream housing vouchers. And also in regards to homelessness, within the last year, the city restarted the One Small Step program, which, as you all know, is the city's alternative sentencing court program. Judge Katie Kurtz has done a tremendous job at bringing together the various internal stakeholders, including the police department's core team, the mental health co-responders, the legal team and housing to coordinate the OSS efforts. Since the restart of OSS, the Housing and Homeless Navigators have housed 9 OSS participants using an Arvada Housing Authority voucher. This success is due to the strong partnerships between the city's internal work systems, as well as a partnership and commitment from our community service providers. And we are proud to say that we had a small role in that partnership. Next slide, please. The Housing Authority continues its efforts to encourage development of affordable housing in Arvada. The report contains a list of affordable housing projects that we are involved with or in conversation with the developer to potentially support. You can find those in the report. Next slide, please. And finally, the recommended activities for the next year include efficient operation of the Housing Choice Voucher Program, application for additional housing vouchers if the opportunity presents itself, partnerships with private and nonprofit developers to encourage more affordable housing development or rehabilitation of affordable housing, to continue to partner with nonprofit organizations to promote self-sufficiency, and to continue our partnerships with others throughout Jefferson County to advance our work related to addressing homelessness. That brings me to the end of the annual report. I am happy to answer any questions that you may have, but if there are no questions, staff recommends approval of the annual report.
Thank you, Mr. Marriott.
I just have a question, Ms. Espinoza. Within the Housing Choice Voucher Program, the money comes to us from the federal government, gets designated for these vouchers, and then we keep part of the money for the overhead of the program. Can you just speak to us about the percentage of the total dollars that's the overhead piece? You know, how efficient are we being with administering or running this program in an effort to put as many vouchers in people's hands as possible?
Sure, that's a great question. So it's actually 2 separate pots of funding that we receive from HUD. There's administrative dollars, and then the rental assistance is separate. We receive about $5.7 million just in rental assistance and close to $500,000 for our administrative work.
Okay, so that means the administration of it is less than 10%. It's 8 or 9% of the total overhead. Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Mormon.
Thank you, and thank you for your work. So I just wanted to go back to at the beginning. You had shared the stat that we had a total of 963 applications accepted and 836 families remain on the wait list. So it's 963 plus 836 is the total of all applicants?
No, we
Okay.
received a total of 963 applications, and when this report was published, 863 remain on the list.
Okay, so the large majority.
Yes.
So can you share just a little bit about what some of the barriers are for us serving that majority of applicants? Is it primarily funding? Is it primarily lack of housing, primarily staffing issues and trying to process them? What are some of the major barriers that we need to overcome?
The major barrier is funding. We do not receive enough funding from HUD. We have a total of 547 vouchers between our regular vouchers and our mainstream vouchers, and we are leasing about 480 because that's all we can use based on our funding. If we receive more funding from HUD, we could go up to our limit of 547.
And in some of the state funds that are coming online through ARPA and other federal programs, the state now is allocating for housing. Are we able to use some of those in addition to help with this?
We could. What we would need to do is establish a separate program, a different rental assistance program, because we would not want to mix state dollars with our
Sure.
federal dollars.
So we just need to establish a separate program to apply for that grant money and use it then for this purpose?
Yes.
Is that something we're looking into?
We could. We would need to look at the staffing for that program and what it entails.
Well, I would encourage us to look
Yes.
into that then, to help
Okay.
meet this great need.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you. Mr. Pfeiffer, okay. Thank you, that's all the comments
Okay.
for that section.
So I need approval of the report.
Okay,
I'll go ahead and make the motion.
okay, Mr. Pfeiffer.
I move to approve the Arvada Housing Authority Annual Report.
Motions for approval. All votes are cast. Mr. Mayor, how do you vote?
I vote aye. I vote aye.
Thank you. And that approval is passed 7-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And then the next item on the agenda is approval of the administrative plan changes. The Housing Authority is required to adopt a written administrative plan that establishes local policies for administration of the Housing Choice Voucher Program. The administrative plan and any revisions to the plan must be formally adopted by the Housing Authority Board of Commissioners. The housing team is proposing revisions to the administrative plan that take effect August 1st, 2022. The proposed revisions are summarized in the attachment, which references their location in the administrative plan. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have, and if there are no questions, staff recommends approval of the annual report.
Thank you. Ms. Smith? No, okay. So we need a motion for approval of the Arvada Housing Authority Administrative Plan. Ms. Simpson?
I move to adopt the changes to the administrative plan.
Motions for approval. Mr. Mayor, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
Thank you. All votes are cast, and that passes 7-0. Thank you very much.
Thank
We really
you very
appreciate
much.
the work that you're doing. And just note to self, when the city attorney asks if you need help talking to me for this meeting, always accept it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. If there's no other business for the Housing Authority, we will adjourn this particular part of the meeting, and we will move on to our next. All right, so now I will call to order the Arvada City Council meeting for July 18th, 2022. And at this time, I'll call on Councilmember Mormon for a moment of silent reflection and the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Jones. Everyone, please join me in a moment of silent reflection. And now please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Ms. Rush, will you please do the roll call?
Mayor Williams,
Aye. Here, present.
Mayor Pro Tem Jones,
Here.
Councilmember Pfeiffer,
Here.
Councilmember Marriott,
Here.
Councilmember Mormon,
Here.
Councilmember Simpson,
Here.
Councilmember Smith.
Here.
Thank you very much. And as you can see, the mayor is joining us remotely. We're grateful that he was here, or that he's here via Zoom, but in his absence and not in council chambers, he's asked that I run tonight's meeting. So Mayor, we're glad that you're here virtually. So presented are the minutes for the City Council business meeting dated June 27th, 2022. Are there any changes or corrections? All right, seeing none, those minutes will stand as presented. We have no recognitions tonight. But next on our agenda is a presentation from our Arvada Parks Committee. Mr. Devon. Oop.
Hi there.
Hello.
I'm here to introduce the Arvada Parks Advisory Committee members. We're going to give a presentation tonight. Chair Max Coxhole will be stepping up to the podium, as well as Jackie Marquise.
Hi. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of City Council. My name is Max Coxhole. I'm currently the chair of the Parks Advisory Committee, and in the name of the APAC and the supporting city team, I would like to thank for the opportunity to give you an update on two of our key projects, the equestrian survey and the Paseo Park naming proposal. Next slide. I want to start out with the equestrian survey. In the past, the city has done many studies with user groups, and we want to make sure that the equestrians are not forgotten. So on the next slide. So it was really the objective of this survey to understand and embrace the voice of the equestrian community so that we can plan for the future. Next slide. We did this through the Speak Up Arvada platform, and we ended up with 273 participants, which is quite an achievement, taking into account that it was a very specific, limited user group. On the next slide, so thinking about, I guess there's a couple of animations. Kevin, you can just click through to show the whole slide. So it's not surprising that most of the users, more than 50%, actually live in Arvada, but it was also quite interesting that almost 50% of the users live in adjacent municipalities, the Denver metro area, and from all over Colorado. And a similar trend is also with people who bought their horse in Arvada, that, yeah, the majority is from Arvada, but people from all over the state actually bought horses in Arvada from as far as Dillon. So I think we can say that Arvada is clearly one of the front-range horse centers, which is really a value to the city and also to the residents. On the next slide. So this also is important because a lot of the users use these trails and facilities more than 20 times per year, which is almost every other week, and really throughout the whole year, so not only through the summer months, but also during winter. So on the next slide, if we can look at what do Arvadans really enjoy about the trails and facilities. And it's really that it gives them an option and variety for riding the horses close to home with easy access in clean, well-maintained facilities to really enjoy the open space and the scenic views. On the next slide. And one key piece that also came up during that general question about what people enjoy was the Outdoor Indiana Equestrian Center, which, not surprisingly, is also the most used facility in the Arvada area, followed by Van Bibber Park, Tucker Lake, the reservoir area, and Ralston Creek. When we look at these top four, it already gives us an indication where in the future we have to make sure that we have all the trail gaps closed and the connections in place so that people can ride all around Arvada. On the next slide. So I added two slides for your packet. I won't talk about them today because obviously with 273 respondents and many open-ended questions, there was tons of data, which we have sliced and diced every which way. And if you have particular question of an area, you can let me know and we can pull out all the details. So today, Kevin, if you want to go forward to the conclusion slide, I really want to focus on the final conclusions and the highlights. So the equestrian trails and facilities really attract equestrians to live, visit, and bring business to Arvada. So I think it's really a value that we should maintain and improve upon. The crown jewel is the Indiana Equestrian Center. And another click. So there were really two key things that, besides general improvement and maintenance, is we need better and safe connections to adjacent trails. So one idea that came up during the survey many times was, could we explore with CDOT the option of an on-demand traffic light on Indiana Street, because it would help cross Indiana safely so that there is the trail connection to all the western trails around Tucker Lake or even connect to Ralston Creek. But there's also right now an accident waiting to happen. if people after shows, if like many horse trailers try to pull out during rush hour at times, and they have to really step on the gas, yank the trailer around to get into the traffic there. So that is really something that we should consider. The other piece is that it needs to be a safe haven for horses. So a lot of people take their horse there to expose them to trail rides in a safe, enclosed environment. And that really explains why there was lots of suggestions to actually prohibit dogs, because it's very difficult to enforce the leash law. And especially during the pandemic, a lot of people saw this as another dog park. The third part is really there's opportunities for trail connections. The city team is already doing a gap analysis for trails and gaps in general. And we will prioritize and align with that and feed into Darren what type of trail connections are missing from an equestrian perspective, so that then the city team can work that into the next proposals. And last but not least, there's a big need to implement trail etiquette and safety improvement initiatives. With the ever-rising number of people living and using the trails and facilities in Arvada, it's really getting tight on trails, and not everybody understands all the other user groups. So there's really a need for education via signage or perhaps a trail etiquette video series. And Jeffco Open Space is working on a regional approach, and we already said that we will work with them as it comes up. And the second point is a lot of people commented that a lot of safety rules are not enforced on trails and in the facilities. So that really opens the question, should we evaluate the ranger program and potentially expand it to the trails and other facilities in one way or the other? With that, I'm at the end of today's presentation. I hope I could give you a good insight in the highlights of what the equestrian needs might be and how they fit in the general parks environment. And hope that during the next budget discussions, you can take that into account and give Vanessa some dollars so that we can implement some of these initiatives. And if you have any questions, I'm open now.
Great, thank you. Any questions from council? Mr. Pfeiffer.
So does animal management show up there and patrol once in a while to make
Yes,
sure it's a safe environment?
They come every once in a while, yes.
Okay. And then does the ranger program, where are we with the ranger program right now? Does it?
So we still have the ranger program. However, it's an unfunded program. So it was established as a pilot initially a couple years ago. And so we're at a point now where we need to evaluate kind of the service levels and what the budget needs will be.
Is it viewed to be kind of a permanent institution within the department or a volunteer program?
Right now it's running as a volunteer program, yeah.
And so the question around is, I've been an advocate for the ranger programs. I think our parks, which we have the most, probably, within 10 minutes walk to any house, right? So, but I've noticed that we get more and more vandalism and education and ambassador opportunities. I mean, are we looking at, I know a lot of the communities around us have ranger programs that are actually FTEs. Are we going to see something in the future for us to look at and evaluate?
Yes, so the Arvada Parks Advisory Committee met last week for their annual goal setting meeting, and one of the goals that came out of their discussion was to evaluate potential models for running a ranger program, a fully funded ranger program in Arvada. And that analysis would include an evaluation of our neighbors, what are the needs of Arvada, and what would the cost be, based on which model makes the most sense for our community. And the hope is that we could come back, APAC could come back with some recommendations and answer some questions for you.
Yeah, I mean, this is a perspective I didn't think much. I drive by Indiana all the time, and I see all those trailers back there, and both there's the actual indoor area, and then there's the outdoor area. And I see a lot of folks there. I guess because it's off the beaten path, you just don't realize that there's concerns and opportunities for us to improve. I'm proud that we had that transaction where, I don't know if folks know this, but this was donated to the city, to us for years ago from a lady that owned it. And, we didn't know what that would look like, and I'm glad it's a huge success. But, if we need I think your recommendations are spot on, and Crown Jewel. I talked to some friends. They always say they come to Arvada, but I never knew the level of it until you guys sent this report. So I appreciate you bringing this to our attention. And hopefully we'll see some progress out of it too.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, since I can't see you, any questions from you? If you're talking, you're muted. All right. Mr. Marriott.
Thank you. So I just wanted to say, number one, congratulations and good work on the survey. I think the amount of responses you got was outstanding and probably paints actually a real clear picture of what's actually happening there. And, I think the amount and variety of parks we have some very unique parks, and this being one of them, and clearly very well used. And I think the level of detail that you guys as an advisory committee are paying to by surveying these things and bringing us results is quite commendable, and thank you for doing that.
Thank you. Ms. Smith?
Yes, I'm just wondering, is it possible I know we're looking at the missing bike connections. I don't own a horse or I don't ride horses, but can they overlay? Is it okay for bikes to ride on the same as horse trails?
Yep, I think technically it's possible, and there is some YouTube videos out there who explain. There's actually a book for bikers how to behave around horses, because it's not only for the safety of the horses, but also for the safety of the bikers. A scared horse might just kick, and then the bicyclist is flying. And I think it's possible, and if we do good education, and I think a lot of people really just don't know. Yeah, there's a few rude, bad apples everywhere, but I think most people who do unfortunate things really don't know. So I think there's a lot of things we can do with education here.
The other question that I had was just wondering is, in the survey, did they identify areas that there should be the trails, like the most used trails or the trails that need to have the connection more than others?
So there were a couple of suggestions, and if you're interested, I can send you the list of all the details. But that's something that we clearly, so Darren DeLay started the gap analysis, and we will work this into the general gap analysis to have an overall approach for that.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Mayor.
And I apologize for the bad connection. I got in and out. First of all, a very positive note, I noted that the Colorado Tap House has a hitching post. So yes. One way to go.
Yes, we saw that. That's really great. The trouble is we have to make the hitching post area part of the restaurant so that we can drink beer there.
Great new establishment in Arvada is by equestrians. Okay. And speaking of bad apples, I think we have to address the road apple issue somewhat too. So as part of the education process, perhaps a discussion of how we address that issue.
I totally agree. There's also bad apples on the equestrian side, yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. Again, thank you for the work by the Parks Advisory Committee. You guys are always looking at lots of fun stuff. And again, to Mr. Pfeiffer's point, there are assets that we have in the city that we probably ought to focus on, this being one of them. So thank you for the work.
All right. So with this, I hand it over to Jackie for the second part of our presentation.
Perfect.
Good evening. My name is Jackie Marquis. I am a member of the APEC group, and I'm happy to be here this evening to provide you with our recommendations and criteria for naming the future Garrison Street Park. If you could advance the slide, please. Importantly on this, I worked together with the subcommittee, and this also got buy-off from the APEC group in our meeting last week. One of the things, not specific just to this park, but the criteria in which we are using to select the naming for public spaces. One is, importantly, to actively solicit and incorporate feedback from the Arvada community. And this can come in many different forms through surveys, engaging with local school groups, also using polls and so on. In this particular case, we also reached out to key stakeholders that were very involved in providing us feedback for this park specifically. We also want to incorporate geological and ecological references, and then also to factor in historical references where it's appropriate, and also consider honoring influential individuals into the naming of our public park. If you could advance to the next slide, please. So this is our naming considerations for this specific project on Garrison. One thing that is very unique to this particular public area is that it is unique and it's linear in terms of it, both its size and shape. It's an urban public area, and the sketch at the bottom is to represent what the design would look like. So very untraditional of a typical park in that it is basically a walkway or pass-through. And it was important to us that we consider the word paseo, which translated in Spanish means walk or stroll, and it's connecting areas to each other. We also reached out to specific groups for consideration, one being the Arvada Community Garden, the other being the Arvada Urban Authority, and also the Hispanic community. One thing we wanted to consider is, it's a little hard to see on the sketch below, but this parallels the Arvada Community Garden, which has a 55-year-old history within the city of Arvada, 140 plots that are represented there. And we thought a great way to incorporate, both from an environmental standpoint and an education standpoint, some of the factors of that very important part of the city of Arvada. And then also a focus on expanding equity in the public naming of spaces in Arvada. If you could advance to the next slide, please. So these are our 3 recommendations for this particular public area. The first choice was El Paseo del Jardín, which translates into the garden walk or stroll. Importantly, all 3 of our recommendations include that word paseo, and we wanted to also bring in a reference to the community garden, and importantly, to have this be Arvada's first Spanish name park that addresses the master plan and the need for equity in the naming of public areas. So that was our first recommendation. The second came directly from a submission from the Arvada Community Garden. They provided over 29 different recommendations on naming for this particular area. And our top recommendation was the Garrison Garden Paseo, again, referencing the garden, a reference to Garrison Street, and also obviously bringing in the garden aspect into the naming. And then the third choice was the Garrison Street Paseo, and this came from a submission from Aurora that includes the street location and also reference to the Paseo. So at the bottom left is a view of what it looks like today. On the left-hand side is the parallel to the community garden as it exists today and the pathway. And then on the right-hand side is a photo taken from the community garden. So these are the 3 recommendations that we would like for your consideration. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much. Any questions from council? Ms. Simpson.
Thank you. And first, thank you for your work bringing this to us. Some great recommendations here. I'm a big fan of the first one myself. I think the garden walk is beautiful. I took French in high school, not Spanish, so I'm not going to attempt to say it because I will butcher it, and that would be bad. So, but I think it's absolutely beautiful. I'm curious if we'll have, as part of the design, any sort of historical artifacts referencing the community and whatnot, and how this name came to be in order to help convey that historical context to our residents.
Yeah, I think that's great. Importantly, I worked with three other members on the subcommittee, and when we were walking the current path and where the Paseo would be, we indeed thought about signage and how we would bring in some of that references not only to the garden, and we thought it would be a great way from a signage perspective to bring in some of the Spanish language aspects and really try to carry that through in how we presented the park.
Perfect. Thank you. I'm really looking forward to this. For those who are unfamiliar, there are plans to have fruit trees so people can just like take an apple or whatnot. It should be very peaceful, a nice place for the community to be able to stroll. So I'm looking forward to it, and I will also have someone teach me how to say that so I can say it properly.
Thank you. Mr. Mormon.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, and I'll help you. Mayor, Councilmember Simpson, it is Paseo del Jardín. I too am in big support of the first choice, and thank you for all your work you have done, and excited to see that we have a first park that has a Spanish name. I think that is very reflective of our growing community, and so I'm in strong support of that. And also just wanted to add, I think, add on to what Councilmember Simpson was saying too about the signage. I'd love to see bilingual signs throughout the park and the garden. I think that'll really strengthen it and help with the educational focus there. So I encourage looking into that. Thank you again.
Great.
Ms. Smith.
I would just echo what Councilmember Mormon said. I'd appreciate to see not just a name, but also talking a little bit about the different languages and historical background of even the Hispanic heritage. So that'd be very helpful and appreciated.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, I'm going to throw a wet blanket on this. I prefer either the second or third choice much better, just in terms of really outlining the location. I think is pretty important for people to understand. This is a connection. Having the Paseo name as part of it, I think reflects a recognition of some Spanish tradition and heritage here. But I think it's important to have the Garrison name in it for location purposes. So I strongly support either the second
And one thing that we
or third choice.
understood, we tried to incorporate that into the naming and including Garrison. However, it suddenly became 7 words if we were going to phrase it correctly in the Spanish language, and that was why we removed that. But point taken on that.
Thank you. And I think we got most of what you said, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Pfeiffer.
Well, I'm from El Paso del Norte, so that's where I'm from, El Paso. So, I mean, obviously I'll go for the first one. I think it is a good reflection. I mean, we did, gosh, I can't think of when we named that one park after some African-American settlers here in Arvada out in Sheridan. That was, I think that was about 8 years ago. So I think it just shows the diversity in our community, and we continue to grow this area. So I'm going to go with the first one as well. I'll support that.
All right, thank you. Any other thoughts or comments? Again, thank you for the work that you're doing. This is it's an important part of our community, and I think that obviously we'll take your recommendations, and I'm sure that at some point we'll have a council action on a future agenda to make that official.
Great.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you very much.
Thank you. Next presentation will be from the Arvada Arts and Culture Commission. Mr. Devon, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and members of council. So I am excited to introduce members of the Arvada Arts and Culture Commission. Emily King, Chair Emily King, will begin her presentation now.
Hi, I'm Emily Grace King. I'm the chair of the Arts and Culture Commission.
And I'm Judy Gardner. I'm the vice chair of the commission.
And we also have a lot of our other lovely members behind us, and our staff liaison, Adele Burton, joining us. So because we have a few newer members on council, and we're also a newer commission, we wanted to meet you, introduce ourselves, and highlight some of our accomplishments, and also talk to you about our changing priorities and strategies. Next slide, please. So we recently refocused our mission and vision statements, and what they come down to at the core is this is who we are as a commission. We use the arts to create deeply connected communities. Next slide, please.
Okay. And the reason that we wanted to re-envision the master plan is that I'm sure that many of you have noticed that the world has changed a bit in the last few years. And in that time also, our community has changed, the demographics of our community are changing, and the role of the arts in the community have changed. And we felt that it was important to re-envision our master plan to bring into harmony, with these changes. Also, many of the goals from the original master plan have been accomplished, so it was no longer goals, they're like done. So next slide, please. So our new mission statement focuses on 4 areas. And we have specific goals within each of these areas, as you'll see. Some of these goals are new. Some are simply restated from the original master plan to just align with changing community needs. And as I said, some of them are done.
So our mission is the Arvada Arts and Culture Commission makes places that deepen community attachment, invests in the future of arts and culture, creates a diversity of arts experiences for all, and makes a home for artists and creative industry. Next slide, please. So we've updated our priorities into each of these 4 categories that align with our mission statement. And the second row you see that's a little bit brighter color are all guiding themes that are directly from the new strategic plan that Council has. So all the goals underneath relate to those guiding themes and to our mission statement. So I encourage you to read that a little more in detail. We won't go over it too much right now. Next slide, please. So we want to update you on some of our major responsibilities as a commission and also highlight our big accomplishments from the past few years. Next slide. So one of our main responsibilities is that we catalog, maintain, and grow the city's art collection. Next slide. So the city has over 200 artworks in its collection. Many are on display at the Arvada Center, here at City Hall, throughout different parks in our community. And we, in order to maintain these, we've partnered with a conservation company that evaluates, cleans, and helps maintain all of these artworks and maintains the investment that the city's made into these artworks. Next slide. So we've also added to the city's collection through some really exciting acquisitions. We purchased Point Gate and installed it at Hoskinson's Park. We partnered with Babe Walls to do a big mural festival along Ralston Creek Trail, and we've also partnered with Old Town Arvada on a number of different exciting art activations there that Judy's going to talk about. Next slide.
Okay, so we've had the opportunity to work with Old Town Business Improvement District to create street murals in the new pedestrian zones, new larger wall murals, and to commission artists to paint several of the utility boxes. Next slide, please. Okay, the Arvada Arts and Culture Commission has had huge support from the business community of Old Town for these installations and projects. It's been exciting to see the activation of Old Town as a really vibrant pedestrian zone. It's been a real excitement to us.
And it's hard these days to take a picture or see one of Old Town without those street murals in it, so that's always exciting too. Next slide, please. So with the changing of the land development code recently, the city allowed full-scale murals for the first time. And so we as a commission wanted to really use kind of the blank canvas of Arvada and make a big splash with really diverse artists by collaborating with Babe Walls. Next slide, please. So Babe Walls brought 28 women and non-binary artists to the Ralston Creek Trail, and their program created 15 new murals all along that trail. And they also held companion art events in Old Town Arvada that supported the small businesses there.
Next slide, please. So the other thing that we were able to do during the COVID lockdown is we really wanted people to engage with the parks and activate them in a new way. And so we partnered with the Landmark exhibit to do several temporary art exhibits. So there are sculptures that are on loan to the city, and then also some murals that are permanent. And so that brought 13 sculptures or murals into the different Arvada parks. And 5 of those 13 artists that participated in the Landmark exhibit were Arvada residents.
Next slide. And you can, go past that one too. Thank
Okay,
you. So we were looking for ways to incorporate things outside of the visual arts into our community's experience. So we purchased a short edition short story dispenser. Next slide, please. So this dispenser spits out a short story on demand for users. It's completely free, and it travels to a different local business every quarter. And since installation in May of 2021, it's distributed over 2,500 stories to the community. Next slide.
Another of our responsibilities is to advocate for the arts. And so what we have been able to accomplish is that we have advocated for the arts in the community. There were some things in the Arvada City Code that were a little unfriendly to artists. One of them, of course, was the thing with murals, because we couldn't do big murals, and now we can. Thank you to the council for approving that change. And also, there were some code restrictions on the way businesses, home-based businesses could be used, and that was unfriendly to artist studios as well as other businesses. And then we also are working to make our calls for entry more equitable. If you notice up there on the slide, it talks about RFQs. This is something all artists know about. That's a request for qualifications. And that means that when you apply for a public arts job, you have to show what other public art you've already done, which means that the same artists are doing public art all over everywhere. So we're looking at ways to make our requests for qualifications or our calls for entry more equitable and more diverse. Another thing that we have been privileged to do was to oversee the distribution of federal COVID relief funds to artists in Arvada.
Next slide, please. So we've been able to accomplish a lot, especially in expanding access for visual arts in Arvada. But we have one big challenge, which is that most of our funding is really limited in what we can spend it on. So next slide, please. So currently 98% of our budget must be spent on capital improvement projects. So they have to last longer than 3 years and cost more than $5,000. And that really restricts what we can support for arts and culture in Arvada. We can't support any kind of performing arts, including dance, music, theater, any kind of literary arts like poetry slams or book readings or publications. We have to get really creative, do anything other than buy big stuff or put big sculptures out in public art for Arvada. And this makes a lot of our master plans completely impossible. So if you go to the next slide, these are our priorities and strategies that are from the new master plan and many that align with your strategic plan as well. Next slide. So in this slide, we've crossed off all of the goals that we cannot accomplish without having non-CIP directed funding. So we're really limited right now in what we can accomplish, and we can't support or encourage most types of arts and culture in Arvada. Next slide, please. So our proposed action to fix this challenge is that we propose an increase to the Arts and Culture Commission's budget specifically for non-CIP funds. And Judy's going to talk a little bit about how we would use that funding and why.
Okay, next slide, please. Really surprisingly, it's often a lot of small projects rather than a couple of big splashes that can really bring more exposure to the arts in a community. We can do a bigger variety of projects, involve more people, involve more artists. Just looking around at some of the communities around us, Wheat Ridge is sponsoring a poet in residence, and they've had a chalk festival. Boulder has done like a cultural grants program. Grand Junction is like a short-term art exhibitions and a student writing competition. And so those are the sort of things that we would like to do more of, because they're using like a small amount of funds to a really great advantage. So next slide, please.
So we're the only community in the Denver area that doesn't support these kind of projects in some way. So with non-CIP funds, our commission would really like to be able to provide cultural activities outside of the visual arts and create a small grants program to empower neighborhood groups and artists to organize and really add vibrancy to their own community and their own groups. And then we also want to be able to increase our collaboration with other commissions, other city departments, and other businesses throughout Arvada. Next slide, please.
So currently, only about 2% of our budget is available for non-CIP projects. Using what little we have there, we've been able to support extra cultural events for existing festivals. We've been able to sponsor a guitar festival, give support, small grants to some local arts nonprofits, but we'd like to do more, and I think with your help we can.
Next slide, please. So to recap, with non-CIP funds, we can connect our diverse community through a broader range of accessible arts and culture experiences and really expand our reach outside of the visual arts. Next slide. Thank you, and we're happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you very much. Any comments or questions from council? Ms. Simpson?
Thank you. So to start, specifically, their request is for new funds, not a removal of the limitations on existing funds.
Yeah, there was some confusion about whether the sourcing of those funds and whether that limitation can be changed or not. So currently, the request that's being put in is for new funds that don't have that designation.
Okay. And would the staff be able to provide some guidance on if there is an issue on this?
We can look at that, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would certainly appreciate looking at that, but I'm fully in support of being able to expand your ability to fulfill more cultural things. I love public art. I've been at several of these ribbon cuttings. I think it's absolutely wonderful. But yes, music festivals, artistic shows, dance festivals, these are all parts of the arts. And particularly for our community, you know, we don't have a community theater. We have a professional theater that's absolutely amazing, but we don't have a community theater where people can be able to showcase their talents in a lot of ways. And so being able to activate that for our residents and give them those outlets is extremely important. So I'm in support of being able to figure that out, however it looks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Ms. Smith?
Yeah, I was just wondering, was there a reason there's a 5K minimum?
So my understanding is that it's just for capital improvement projects, and that was the definition that was supplied to us for capital improvement projects. So there have been a number of times where things have been proposed to us that were under that amount, and we had to decide if either we were going to overfund them or not fund them at all.
Gotcha. All right. Do you have any knowledge?
I don't have an explanation right off the top of my tongue here, but I can certainly, we can certainly look at that as well.
Awesome. And the other question I just had was would it be within the capacity to look for other grant funding for it, you know, outside of city funds? Because one of the things that, while, you know, we would love to keep funding all different projects, it's competing interests. So how are we going to manage that? So has there been thought or discussion around that?
Yeah, our commission is newer, and we've had a lot of staff changes in the department as a whole and in our staff liaison. But my understanding and what they were told kind of previous to us was that the commission itself could not seek grants. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if that is still the case or if that has changed.
Okay.
So,
all right, thanks.
Yeah.
All right. I'm not seeing any other questions or comments, but again, we appreciate the work that the Arts and Culture Commission is doing. A lot of really cool stuff around, and anybody who's been to Old Town saw those murals on the ground and the Babe walls, and it's kind of cool to see.
Thank
so
you.
thank you very
so
much.
for the opportunity.
Yep. All right. Thank you. Well, next on the agenda is a public comment for items not scheduled on the agenda for a public hearing tonight. So this is your opportunity to speak to the City Council on any item that you wish to do so. You'll have a 3-minute time limit. We always listen very carefully to the things that you say to us, but we will not comment back to your comments. We'll, the team, our team over here will take vigorous notes, and we'll follow up with you if there's any follow-up that needs to happen. We have several that have signed up for public comment, and I will take them as I receive them. First up is Wendy Spencer. Thank you. If you'll please come to the podium and state your name and address.
Can you hear me okay?
We can, thank you.
Thank you. My name is Wendy Spencer, spelled S-P-E-N-C-E-R. My address is 16864 West 62nd Lane, 80403. It's in Arvada. Okay, my minute. Okay, I want to have a comment about a couple of things. First of all, I want to say that Arvada is an absolutely lovely town. The parks are incredibly well-groomed. We have a thriving old town that's really neat, well-planned festivals. Those are just a few examples contributing to the livability of our community. Arvada leadership should take credit for much of this success. It's been wonderful. It also follows that Arvada leadership should take credit, if you will, for the burgeoning crime in the community. All of the interesting festivals are for naught if our crime is increasing, which it is. I feel one of the basic functions of municipal leadership is to keep their citizens and businesses safe. I no longer feel super safe in Arvada, which I used to. According to my sources, which I have brought here, and I can hand this to you, In 2020, the Arvada Crime Index was rated at 11. Now that sounds real good, but that's 11 out of 100. That means Arvada is safer than only 11% of other comparable cities in the U.S. The chances of being a victim of a violent crime in Arvada are 1 in 444. So also, the chance of being a victim of a property crime is 1 in 32 in Arvada. These statistics do not reflect well on Arvada leadership. Moreover, car theft is in epidemic proportions, much higher than the national average. Now, you may or may not be aware that criminals do talk with each other, and they know which communities have lighter sentencing, go easier on them. Your policies have put out a welcome mat for the criminals to come to our community and prey on citizens. I encourage you to change the spiraling downhill by making public safety a budgetary priority, directing your district attorneys and judges to prosecute criminals to the fullest extent, and keeping school resource officers in our schools. You know, I would really, really hate to wake up one day and find out, guess what, we've turned to downtown Denver. That would really be horrible. My friends and neighbors are fed up with the policies, and we've been making the city unsafe and putting the rights of criminals above ordinary citizens. We vote, we pay taxes, and we pay their salaries. I doubt criminals are exactly issuing and submitting 1099s to the IRS and paying their taxes on their ill-gotten gains. So I have handouts if you want to review them. Thank you for listening to me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And you can give those to the city clerk, and she can get those to us. Thank you very much. Next is Sunny Germain Pickett, I believe, if I'm reading this correctly.
Yes,
Good afternoon, Mayor Williams, Mr. Chairman, and Commissioners. My name is Sunny Germain Pickett. I've served in the United States Navy for 6 years, honorably discharged, and I currently live in Arvada. I'm also a volunteer for the Kairos Prison Ministry, and I come before you to ask you about helping with the crime rising in Arvada. I live off 72nd and Oak, and of course, you know, there's kids walking home from school and there's speeding, but it's not only that, it's just that our crime is getting higher. If you choose the crime, you choose the behavior. And I think that the city of Arvada can incorporate a STEP program, and I don't know if that would go into the affordable housing unit, just identify some of the frequent flyer issues of the criminals, such as mental health, drugs, maybe homelessness, but not only that, getting to the core issue. Because in the Kairos Ministry program, we look at trying to minimize the recidivism of crime. And I think we need to get to the issue. It's not only a heart issue, but it's also a society issue. And the STEP program, if I can get to that real quick. It's about sobriety, taking accountability, and recovery. And once we identify what is going on with the crime and find out, I think we also need to incorporate that into maybe the affordable housing program, if we can find that out. And as our police officers are not supposed to be, you know, mental health people. I think our police officers need to be supported in combating crime and getting people off the street that are committing frequent crime within our city. So if there's anything I can do to help, please let me know. I'm not just here just to espouse, you know, this is our issues, but I'm willing to be part of the, you know, part of the solution too. Thank you for listening, and I appreciate it. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me more about the STEP program. That does have in Denver and has been a successful program.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your service. Ed Tomlinson.
A little larger, maybe? Thank you. Hi, Ed Tomlinson, thank you. Arvada has a total of 1,800 warrants out for arrest for all types of crime, 1,800. Criminals are running in our neighborhood. What we're doing now isn't working. Here's my 22 minimum suggestions to reduce theft. Arvada's theft and shoplifting ordinance, 4415, maximum fines are not close to Colorado's, nor adjusted for inflation yearly as required, and should be increased to $5,000. Is something wrong with the Arvada judicial system? Court revenue has dropped $1 million or $750,000, depending on which budget summary you read. And it's continuing to drop, and it's not because of COVID or a 75% drop in crime. Please ask the municipal court and court prosecutors to keep stats on sentencing, types of warrants, plea bargains, dismissals, repeat offenders, etc. Please mandate the following minimums. If it's theft of a catalytic converter, workplace tools, or something needed in the victim's job, sentenced to 180 days house arrest with ankle bracelet and $2,500 court costs. Why? According to an Arvada cop, the car owner will be out 5 months before a new $1,500 to $5,000 converter can be installed, plus rental car expenses, which aren't covered by the law. A second conviction requires 1 year in Colorado State Penitentiary, with fines large enough to cover court costs and transportation. Sentence all classes of misdemeanor theft, convictions to house arrest for 1 day per $50 of theft, with a 3-day minimum. A second conviction requires county jail time. A third conviction is sentenced to a correctional facility to help with mental illness, addictions, etc., and a fine to cover transportation and court costs. Arrested with more than 2 outstanding warrants and convictions gets sent to an appropriate correctional facility for help with mental illness, addictions, etc. If this sounds harsh, property worth $2,000 is equal to 2 weeks worth of work for most people, plus the hardship created by the loss, adversely affecting families, their children, the victim's livelihood, and in some cases, the victims getting fired or lives ruined. I have 14 more suggestions that time won't allow, so please allow me to audit your ongoing study on this matter to help me understand better. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Daniel Mondragon.
Good evening. It is good to be here with you all tonight. And on such a night where we're hearing about the incredible work being done on behalf of our city and by the leaders of our city and different commissions. I wanted to come here tonight as a follow-up to last time I was before you and with a number of other people talking about DEI issue. I appreciated Councilman Pfeiffer's comment at the end of that time talking about accessibility as an important aspect that needs to be incorporated as well. You are absolutely correct. DEI work crosses all of the gender lines, racial lines, accessibility lines, so that is definitely in line with my thinking and others in the DEI community. Martin Luther King said, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. This reality has been termed intersectionality. Intersectionality is a qualitative analytical framework developed in the late 20th century that identifies how interlocking systems of power affects those who have been marginalized in society. The operative word is interlocking. Statistics are so important. I'll take, for example, gender and race pay inequalities. We've heard the examples, the stories of how much women make in comparison to men in general. And then if you push on that more, may see also discrepancies with regards to pay for women of different ethnic or racial backgrounds. All of the statistics are so important, and then to ask the questions why, and to push on it, and to find out what are the reasons for those, and what can be done about it. So the danger of focusing in on one issue area, whatever it may be, gender, race, accessibility, or suggesting movement cannot happen until all issue areas are addressed together, the danger is inaction. Excuses cannot be made for not moving forward. What is the common denominator for actions that address various challenges, issues, and injustices? It is respect. You know, I wonder if movement is happening on accessibility out of respect for people whose bodily limitations have prevented them from participating, or is it only because there's an ADA out there? How about hiring practices? Is it done out of respect or to comply with laws and regulations? Is the city's housing work we heard tonight out of respect for people needing assistance? And everything that we heard about parks, about the El Paseo del Jardín, and of the Arts and Culture Commission, all of that done out of respect for all of us in our Arvada community. Now is the time of creating a new American story right here in Arvada, bringing together all of our diverse stories to build a wonderful community for all of us. Thank you for your work.
Thank you for your comments. We appreciate it. Sherry Glennon.
Good evening. I'm here to speak about the crime in Arvada, as well as Ed Tomlinson. I'm very concerned about the crime that has been going on in Arvada, and it's affecting everyone. And as a point in case, I live in a retirement community in Arvada with about 50 other people, and one of the gentlemen that lives with me had his catalytic converter just a few days ago stolen from his car. Now he's going to have to pay $1,200 to $2,700 is the quotes that he got to get that catalytic converter replaced. It's very, very concerning because he absolutely does not have that money, and now he will not be able to use his car to do shopping, going to work, any kind of thing that he needs to do in Arvada. And it's concerning because I live right with him and I know I'm next, maybe. The catalytic converter was stolen right from the parking lot. It wasn't on the street, it was right in the parking lot where we live. And this is very, very concerning. One of the things I would like to suggest, and maybe it's a far out thing, but why couldn't the person that's buying the converter get into trouble as much as the person that's selling it? To me, that makes sense. Wouldn't that stop the flow of money of people buying and selling those converters to, to other people? It just seems like it's an many people have had this happen to them, and it's not just me, and it's not just in my area, but it's all over. And I've heard that millions of dollars are being sold one way or the other in this effort of because there's metals inside the catalytic converter that are valuable. This crime just really, it's more crime than this, but all of the crime that we have to face is very concerning in Colorado. How can we even live here in Arvada if we are threatened by crime every single day? Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Those are all the sign-ups I had for this evening. Is there anybody else in council chambers that didn't sign up that would wish to speak during this public comment session? All right, thank you very much. Next on our agenda is the two consent agenda items. First, R22-049, a resolution authorizing an agreement between the City of Arvada and J. Napoleon and Company, accepting a permit drainage easement generally located at 6651 West 52nd Avenue, and R22-050, a resolution amending and restating plan documents and authorizing adoption agreements for the Executive Defined Contribution Retirement Plan, City Manager Retirement Plan, City Attorney Retirement Plan, and Municipal Judge Retirement Plan. Mr. Marriott.
Thank you, Your Honor. I move that R22-049 and R22-050 both be approved.
Thank you. Motions for approval. All votes are cast. Mr. Mayor, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
That passes 7-0. Thank you very much. Next on the agenda are our resolutions. First, we'll consider R22-051, a resolution authorizing an intergovernmental agreement between the Colorado Department of Transportation and the City of Arvada regarding Community Mobility Planning and Implementation, CMPI, and set aside of the Surface Transportation Block Grant Programs, STBG. Mr. Devon.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, this is essentially a grant opportunity that will create a project that will study the Little Dry Creek area, trail area between West 77th Avenue and West 80th Avenue in Vance Drive and Yarrow Street. This is an area of the Little Dry Creek Trail, which is a pretty significant regional trail in our community, to look at the opportunity for a separation of the trail from traffic movements as you cross Wadsworth Boulevard, and then moves on street between Vance Drive and Allison Street. The project team will organize a schedule and a stakeholder process that will include neighborhood, community, business owners, property owners, and also advocacy groups such as our own Citizens Transportation Advisory Committee, as well as Parks Advisory Committee and Bike Friendly Arvada and other similar stakeholder groups. This will give us an opportunity to look at improving safety at a major trail intersection, and we are recommending approval so we could go forward in partnership with the study of this particular opportunity.
Thank you very much. Ms. Rush, do we have any members of the community wishing to speak on this resolution? Thank you. This time I'll entertain any council action. Mr. Marriott.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'll move that R22-051, a resolution authorizing an intergovernmental agreement between the Colorado Department of Transportation and the City of Arvada regarding the Community Mobility Planning and Implementation, CMPI, set aside of the Surface Transportation Block Grant Program, STBG, be approved.
Thank you very much. Motions for approval. Mr. Mayor, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
And that motion for resolution passes 7-0. Thank you very much. We have no first readings tonight, but we do have a need for a motion to call a special city council meeting. And the purpose of this meeting is to conduct an executive session for city manager interviews. Do I have a member of council who would be willing to make that motion? Ms. Smith?
I don't see it written, so I'm going to go ad hoc. Is it written
Would
somewhere?
you? I don't know that it's written. Would you like some help from our city attorney? She's really good at that, as evidenced.
Page 281. Let me just scroll down to 281. Is it? All right. Getting there. All right.
Yeah, the Councilmember Smith, if you're on the right page, under report and brief is the actual motion.
I'm getting that. Councilmember Pfeiffer, if you see it, you can take it.
All right, Mr. Pfeiffer.
Okay. I move to call a special meeting on Tuesday, August 9th, 2022 at 8 a.m. for the sole purpose of an executive session pursuant to Colorado Revised Statutes 24-6-402, Pren 4, Pren F as in Frank, regarding a personnel matter so that the city council can conduct city manager interviews.
Motions for approval for a special executive session. Mr. Mayor, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
And that passes 7-0. And again, just for clarity, August, can you give us the dates again, Bob?
Yeah, that's August 9th at 8 a.m.
Thank you. And that's for all day, correct?
All day, that's correct.
Thank you very much. Now we'll open the public hearing for Council Bill 22-061, an ordinance vacating a portion of right-of-way as platted with Candela's Medical Filing Number 1 subdivision located northwest of West 91st Drive, the City of Arvada, County of Jefferson, State of Colorado, ordinance number 4808. Mr. Devon.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I believe we're going to have Carol Bonas make this presentation.
Sorry, I was just getting her to come up here in case I had any questions for her. I'm sorry. So I'll give a real brief introduction and then ask Carol to follow up if need be. But this is a request to vacate a portion of street right-of-way within the Candelas Medical Filing Number 1. It will serve, or it's proposed to currently serve 3 lots that under the development plan that's currently under review would be consolidated into a single development area. So this right-of-way is no longer necessary for that development proposal or those lots.
Yes.
We have received the signed posting log and mailing affidavit, and they are in order. Carol is here to answer any questions you may have, and that concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much. I'll now open up the public comment portion of this hearing. Ms. Russ, do we have anyone signed up for this hearing? All right, seeing anyone in council chambers here for this hearing? All right, seeing none, we'll close that public comment portion of the hearing and open it up for council actions, questions or actions. Mr. Pfeiffer.
I'll go ahead and make the motion, but I just want clarifying questions real quick with the team.
Go ahead.
Just to orient ourselves to this area that we're vacating the right-of-way, I think currently there is a road, there's a medical center that's built there now, there's a road that kind of veers off to the west. Because it doesn't really show Candelas Parkway here, so I'm assuming that's further east of there. And so the road what you're talking about vacating is, if I'm looking at the circle, was there, I wish there was something that showed us what we're vacating versus what's being proposed.
You can switch to the third slide, next slide. So basically, the property is located south of Candelas Parkway, south and east side of Candelas Parkway.
West.
I'm sorry, the
Yeah,
west side.
yeah.
Looking at the west side of this. The intent was originally when we did this plat was that we're going to have a variety of lots available for Candelas medical office development. And a couple years ago, they wanted to change that, and they moved into doing residential. So we did the development was replatted as part of, or rezoned as part of the Land Development Code update. And then we zoned it from PUD business professional to R24, and the remaining portion, lot 6, or 5, I'm sorry, was rezoned to commercial general. Lot 4 was zoned to commercial general. So the access was then not required for this development, so they were vacating the portion on the north, it is the northwest side of West 91st. So that went away because they're incorporating that with their site plan. And then there is a road up to the side, West 91st would continue up. But that portion on the north side was no longer needed and incorporated as part of this new site plan that they're developing for the residential development.
Because we don't see it, you're talking there was a road that continued west?
Yes, it went through
So
to
this
the
one
next lot.
This one shows it dead ends, right?
Right.
And then it further went west?
Yes.
And so now that those
Is part-
plots are not there, those,
That would be part of the site plan that the residential is
Okay.
incorporating into their development.
and so, I'm just going visually, so the property gets narrow in that area, and that, I think there's a retaining wall. So is that road never thought to go
No.
past the property?
Right, you're
Okay.
correct. And then that area is their regional detention pond
Okay.
in the north side. There is also an easement that the fire department has accepted from the Candelas Medical Development to the east side onto Candelas Parkway. So there is also an access point for fire to access that side on the northern side that would connect to this property. And
Okay.
that's a separate easement that they got.
I know this is a little bit different, but will we not see this later down the road, this development, or is Ryan?
No, this would be an administratively
Okay.
reviewed project.
Is this, I know this is probably a little bit out of the vacay, but when we redid the zoning in this area, was this the area we were looking at putting the apartments and so forth that showed higher densities? But I thought that included all the way down by the dam area of the Wood
No,
Lake.
it's just this area
Okay.
that we have. Everything else is on the west side, which is the Trailstone development.
Okay. If there's not any other questions, I'll go ahead and make the motion.
There are no other questions. Proceed with your motion.
I move that Council Bill 22-061, ordinance vacating a portion of the right-of-way as platted with Candelas Medical filing number 1 subdivision located northwest of West 91st Drive, the city of Arvada, county of Jefferson, state of Colorado, be approved on final reading number 4808 and ordered published by title only.
Thank you. Motions for approval. Mr. Mayor, how do you vote?
I vote yes, but we should also make clear that the posting log and mailing affidavit are made part of the public record.
Thank you. That is so stated. That passes 7-0. That's why you're here, Mayor. All right. Next, I will open public hearing for Council Bill 22-062, an ordinance amending Article 4, Engineering Codes of Standards and Specifications of Chapter 78, Public Improvements of the Arvada City Code, thereby repealing the existing engineering codes of standards and specifications for design and construction of public improvements dated January 12th, 2016, and adopting new code titled Engineering Code of Standards and Specifications dated July 26th, 2022, ordinance number 4809. Mr. Devitt.
Yes, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council, it's my pleasure to introduce City Engineer Jacqueline Rhodes, who will give a brief overview of what's before you tonight and also be available to answer any questions. We also have other members of the team that could also answer questions as well.
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight and talk about our engineering standards update project. I want to provide a brief overview of the process we undertook. So as you know, periodic revisions occur to our standards to reflect updated city planning documents and incorporate current regulatory requirements and industry practices. The existing spec book is from 2016. So our update project actually began in 2020, and we advanced it over the past 2 years with collaboration, a true collaboration across work systems. We had contributions from Public Works, utilities, planning, parks, legal, and this included multiple office and operations staff. As part of our community engagement process, we posted a draft of the standards to a Speak Up page in April, and we advertised to city licensed contractors, all permit applicants, and engineering consultants in our system, which was over 800 emails that we distributed to. We had a good response rate in terms of opening of that email, and we were encouraged to, we encouraged those parties to submit comments. The engineering team held open office hours, and we also met with the Citizens Transportation Committee to review their specific comments. We estimate that we did a good job of informing our relevant community with the upcoming changes, though the response rate through our Speak Up page was low. Most of the comments we received on the books on the updated standards were received directly via email to our team. We reviewed all of the comments with the team, and we made revisions to the book you see before you today, logging all of our responses. So moving forward, the team is committed to quarterly meetings where we can bring forward more frequently than every 5 years to council for consideration update to the standards. And as city engineer, we can correct obvious typographical or composition errors for clarity. So with that, I just wanted to provide that overview of the process we took.
Thank you very much. And for just in case, I just want to make sure that if there was any posting log or mailing affidavit, that those are made as part of the public record. So thank you, Mr. Mayor, for keeping us on track there. But I'll now open the public comment portion of this hearing. Is there anyone in council chambers wishing to speak to this hearing? All right, seeing none, we'll close the public comment portion of this hearing, and I'll open it up for council comments or actions. Mr. Marriott.
Yeah, I have a question for our city team or city engineer. So you mentioned that we reached out to our customers, so to speak, our constituent groups, and received feedback from them. Can you just give us tell us kind of what their feedback was?
Absolutely. Some of them were very general comments about, please describe to us what's changed, and significant reorganization of the book occurred. As you may have noticed, we went from 4 major parts to discipline-specific, 11 specific chapters. But we also had a number of detailed comments, both from our consultant community, I think representing developers, detailed comments throughout the sections, as well as from the contracting community. I'd say they're pretty broad-reaching. I can't think of any specific themes that came through in those comments.
Okay. And did we, as we were working on these, did any of the comments we received from these constituent groups, did any of them affect our proposed changes? I mean, did anything get modified as a consequence of a comment that somebody made?
Corrections, certainly. As I mentioned with the reorganization of the book, there were still some cross-referencing errors that had occurred in some of our standard details and drawings, and we certainly were able to pick up those changes. We're also able to add some clarification around some of our process improvements, so timelines by which we would implement our warranty process, those types of clarifications were incorporated in the book.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Ms. Smith.
Yes, thank you for all the work and the feedback. One of the questions that I had was on section 45, the landscaping. So has there been any feedback from the people that you've talked to regarding any sort of more drought resistant or more xeriscape environments in the builds, or has that not changed?
So no specific comments through the public process, that we worked very closely with our parks teams to make sure that our seed mixtures and our current standards for our parks projects were relevant to those types of updates.
Do we think it's worth looking at how to incorporate or incentivize or motivate more of that kind of drought resistant or less water dependent landscaping in this, or no?
These are themes we've been discussing as a team, so whether it be throughout other code updates or within our engineering standards, I think that we can continue to examine that through some of our other processes, but specific to the engineering code, I can't think of specific improvements for green infrastructure or drought tolerant improvements.
Okay.
Any other council comments or action?
If I can, just real briefly, when we do planning reviews, we do have a recommended set of drought-tolerant xeric materials that we review our private development cases against, as well as public facilities.
Mr. Marriott.
Thank you, Your Honor. So I will move that Council Bill 22-062, an ordinance amending Article 4, Engineering Codes of Standards and Specifications of Chapter 78, Public Improvements, of the Arvada City Code, thereby repealing the existing engineering code of standards and specifications for design and construction of public improvements dated January 12, 2016, and adopting a new code titled Engineering Code of Standards and Specifications dated July 26, 2022, be approved on final reading numbered 4809 and ordered published by title only.
Thank you. All votes are cast. Mr. Mayor, how do you vote?
I vote
And that passes 7-0. Thank you very much for your work on that. Now we'll open the public hearings for the following agenda items. A major modification from Land Development Code subsection 4-5-3-6.C.2 to allow vehicle stacking in the side setback when the LDC prohibits vehicle stacking in the front and side street setbacks, generally located at 7307 West 52nd Avenue in the city of Arvada, Colorado. A major modification from Land Development Code subsection 2-1-5-3.f to allow a 32.5% building facade located within the frontage zone when the LDC requires a 60% building facade to be located within the frontage zone, generally located at 7370 West 52nd Avenue in the city of Arvada, Colorado. Third, a major modification from the Land Development Code subsection 5-1-3-1 to allow a single usable floor on a pedestrian priority street when the LDC requires 2 usable floors on a pedestrian priority street generally located at 7370 West 52nd Avenue in the city of Arvada, Colorado. Fourth, a major modification from the Land Development Code subsection 5-1-6-2.B.3.C to allow drive-through lane not to be fully enclosed within the envelope of the building within one visible drive-through window on a public street when the LDC requires a drive-through lane to be fully enclosed within the envelope of the building with drive-through windows not visible to public streets generally located at 7370 West 52nd Avenue in the city of Arvada, Colorado, and a major modification from the Land Development Code subsection 5-1-2-6-F requiring transparency for buildings located within frontage zone generally located at 7370 West 52nd Avenue in the city of Arvada, Colorado. Mr. Devon.
Yes, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council will have Planning Manager Rob Smetana introduce these items.
Thank you. The applicant is requesting the 5 major modifications that you just went through to allow for the development of an in-and-out restaurant within the mixed-use transit zoning district. The site, which is located at the southeast corner of 52nd and Wadsworth, is currently occupied by parking and landscaping associated with the Arvada Marketplace Shopping Center. Access to the site is proposed to be provided through existing internal drives within the shopping center. The conceptual site plan provided with the major modification requests indicates how the proposed development would be mitigated, is proposed to be, the applicant proposes to mitigate the impact of the modifications. Additional landscaping and a solid wall will help to screen the drive-through lanes from adjacent streets. The building has been designed with a canopy over the drive-through lane adjacent to Wadsworth Boulevard to give the appearance of a significant architectural structure. An outdoor dining area has also been proposed to provide for more pedestrian-friendly activity. The minimum 2-story height required by the MXT district cannot be achieved at this location due to restrictive private covenants governing the property. The Planning Commission recommended approval of the major modification requests at their June 7th meeting, subject to the condition regarding building enhancements to the Wadsworth elevation as identified in the staff report. We have received the signed posting log and mailing affidavit, and they are in order. The applicant is in attendance for a presentation and questions. I'm also available for questions We also have Jenny Wolfschlag and Kyle Glitzer from our development engineering team, if you have any questions for them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The posting log and mailing affidavit will be included as part of the record. Will anyone who wishes to testify in this matter please raise your right hand? Do you swear and affirm that the testimony that you will be giving in these proceedings will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I didn't see the applicant. Did you have your hand up? Sorry, we'll do that one more time. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you will be giving in these proceedings will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you very much. The applicant may make their presentation.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, members of City Council. My name is Tasha Bolivar. I'm here with Galloway, located at 5500 Greenwood Plaza Boulevard, Suite 200 in Greenwood Village, Colorado. Joining me tonight is Katie Sanchez with In-N-Out Burger, as well as members of our design team if questions come up. Before we get started, big thanks to Rob and the whole team in Community and Economic Development. It took us some time to get here, so we're really pleased to be here asking for these modifications for what we hope you guys agree is a great development for this location. Next slide. So Rob went through kind of where this is located. Everybody's familiar with 52nd and Wadsworth. Large marketplace shopping center with a lot of national users as well as smaller users in the whole center. So we are talking about redeveloping the northwest corner of the shopping center there, which is parking, as Rob had mentioned. The total shopping center includes almost 460,000 square feet of retail square footage right now. So we are just proposing the northwest corner of that for the drive-through restaurant and patio area and associated improvements. So next slide. This is just a little bit closer up detail of the proposed development with the building just under 3,900 square feet on 1.25 acres roughly. Rob went through the zoning. I believe we mentioned the MXT zone district, which allows for the fast food restaurant with as limited use there. So I think we're good there. We are oriented towards the Wadsworth side of the development, which was coordinated with staff. And our stacking lane was situated this way so that the stacking lane can accommodate up to 30 vehicles, which we believe should help accommodate this use and this particular user in this shopping center. On site, we've got 53 parking spaces, which meets city code and should meet the demands of this development as well. So next slide. So first modification is that stacking areas should not be located in the front or side setback. So Rob had mentioned I don't have there's no like pointer? No, okay. So this is really focusing in on the west side of the building where we've got the existing 30-foot buffer along Wadsworth Boulevard that helps to screen and meet the intent of the code here, which a buffer yard is one of the items listed for that screening, that stacking. We have that area, plus we have the screen wall located between the columns that is indicated there on the site plan that will all work together to shield and screen that area from view along with the grades. The existing area, or the existing landscaping in that 30-foot area will be enhanced. We will be adding additional landscaping in that area as well, which should add to that buffer area. Next slide. This modification is for the percentage of building facade that must be located in the frontage zone. In this case, it requires a 60% Building facade within 20 feet as currently shown, and I think as Rob had mentioned, the proposed site plan locates 16.1% of the building facade within the frontage zone. Although it should be noted that the code does allow that a covered patio, which we've got on the north side of the building there, that doesn't affect the fundamental relationship of the building to the street, may also be included in that calculation. And that's where we came up with the 32.5% that we're asking for allowance of, is by adding that patio area into that calculation. Next slide. This modification is about the pedestrian priority streets, and the buildings fronting these streets should have activation and commercial uses. We had talked about, or Rob mentioned, the 25-foot height limitations. We've got minimums and maximums here. So right now in our application, we're showing 23-foot building height there, and obviously due to operating the operations of the building, a 2-story building is not doable for this type of a user in this area or anywhere. So we are proposing that relief from those requirements. Next slide. This one is about the drive-through lane being enclosed, and enclosed in the building envelope, I'm sorry. So traditionally, the building envelope would probably be just the building as it's located in that white area, but we believe that the way that this building was designed, we have canopies that go out over the drive-through lane on both the west side and the south side of the building that do meet the intent and the requirements of that building envelope requirement. And so if you add those areas in, then the drive-through lane is within the building envelope. Those are pretty substantial structures that help to add to the architectural design of the building and really enhance those drive-through lane areas so that they are not as visible. So, next slide. So this modification is about the transparency, and again, we're looking at the facade facing Wadsworth. So those columns, there's openings between those, which we believe with the addition of that, the wall at the bottom there should be viewed as transparency, and that's where when you add those in, when you add those openings in, then we get to a percentage that actually exceeds the requirement. So we're at 63% if we include those areas between the columns as transparency. Because those columns come out over the drive-through, they add to the architecture on that side of the building and the transparency along that western elevation along Wadsworth. Next slide. So we've got a couple of perspectives here. This first one is from the intersection of Wadsworth and 52nd. So it shows the shared sign there in the foreground of the image. So you can see that the grade, the building itself sits down below Wadsworth in these images, which also helps with some of the requests that we have here, in addition to the landscaping and wall additions that we're talking about to help with the drive-through location and the architecture. Next slide. This one is a view from Wadsworth. So you're looking at those columns, like we said. There's cars shown in the drive-through there that show between the different mechanisms used to screen that view that you hardly notice that there's cars there. So that's really great from a view like this with what the intent of the code is. Next slide. This one is looking at the site from that right-in, right-out access along 52nd. So you're really seeing the main entrance, the patio area on the north, and what you would see as you're turning into the center. Next slide. And finally, this is a closer in view as you're internal to the site, looking at more detail related to that outdoor patio and the main entrance areas for pedestrians and customers to enter the building. So lastly, we wanted to talk about opening preparation. So assuming this project moves forward and you guys support the modifications as they're proposed, we wanted to talk a little bit about traffic and how we handle these kinds of things from an in and out perspective. And so I've got Katie here with me to talk through these items. Since we know traffic is a question that's going to come up, so we wanted to talk about the importance of traffic control and planning from in and outs perspective, because for them, making sure the operations of this site is most important to them, so that customers want to come here, so that the city of Arvada wants to support this business.
Thank you, Tasha. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. Katie Sanchez with In-N-Out Burger, 13502 Hamburger Lane, Baldwin Park, California. Although traffic isn't up for voting and in this use tonight, we just wanted to be proactive. I know there's concerns. There's always concerns with us coming to town, especially given this being the first one in Arvada. So what I wanted to briefly touch on is how important traffic control is for us. Opening week and day and month and up to sometimes 6 months. What we do is about 6 weeks before we open a store, we all meet on my side, which is the development side. We meet with our operations team. And just to kind of briefly go over how we open is we have a team of all-stars, which we call them, and they're the best of our associates. So they're the ones inside cooking. Usually the first 4 weeks, they're teaching the new associates how to cut tomatoes and lettuce and peel potatoes, things like that. So not only are they on the inside and helping with operations, but they're outside as well, all over the parking lot, all over a new store opening. So what we do is we meet with them and come up with a traffic control plan, which we have with a licensed traffic engineer. And once we feel that it is in a safe place as far as design goes, we bring it to the city and discuss with traffic engineers, and we go as far as pulling traffic control permits. And that's for us to anticipate what might be our queue for opening week up to a couple weeks into it. And the reasoning for this is that we want to control our opening as far as customer experience. As I mentioned, we have our best of the best inside, cooking the burgers and fries and pouring the shakes, but we also want to have and do have our best of the best out directing traffic. Customer experience, I'm sure, as many of you have gone to our restaurants, is number one for us. So that's why we try to prep early on and continue to do so throughout opening. And once we keep our staff out there, so we hire a uniformed company. I think they're on maybe our 80th store at this point. They come out with their uniforms, their motorcycles. There's that company. We also hire flaggers to come out and direct traffic with signs everywhere, and as well as our all-star teams are out there as well. So if there's anything specific questions, I don't know if now's the time for that or not for me with this plan.
We'll come back to that, but thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next slide. Just in closing, we want to thank you for your time and your consideration tonight. As Katie mentioned, In-N-Out's excited to be here and having the opportunity to become a part of Arvada. And our team is here to answer any questions if you have them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll open now the public comment portion of the hearing. We have a few individuals who have signed up to speak. One who filled out the paper but does not wish to speak, Jim Knefferly. I didn't say your last name right, I apologize, but wants to be on record as being against the issue. So first I will call up Lisa D. Hamilton Fieldman. And again, if you'll state your name and address for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes to address council.
I thought I had 5 minutes.
I'm sorry, during this portion, it's 3 minutes. There is another public hearing at the end that's for items not on the agenda that is for 5 minutes.
Okay. With my sister, we did submit written comments, and I apologize that they were not submitted until this afternoon. Your packets don't get put online for the public until Friday, and so I was, for the agenda packet, and so I was busy trying to make sure that we had the appropriate information, and it just took me some time. I brought 3 maps, and they are part of the packet of information that I submitted in written comments, but this is the most important one. We commented at the Planning Commission also, and the summary of our comments was basically we have traffic issues. We do not have generalized traffic concerns. We have very specific traffic concerns. All of the modifications that are proposed by the applicant, the emphasis there has been on aesthetics. Aesthetics are not going to be the problem with this development. The problem is going to be the sheer volume of traffic. And as they have already acknowledged, and I did some research after the Planning Commission, and I've been down to the Belmar location probably 20 times. The only time that I have not seen people in both sides of their stacking lanes is at approximately 1 in the morning, and they are open till 1:30 in the morning. The traffic volume is just, it persists. Belmar's been open for over 2 years, and the traffic volume has not decreased. The Planning Commission staff said basically traffic is not part of the consideration of these modifications. With due respect, we believe that they should be. If you look at my written comments, you can see that the staff report at page 6 talks about in order to mitigate the impact of the drive-through lane of the adjacent streets. And then they go on to talk about the aesthetic modifications that they propose. We believe that the impact of the drive-through lanes is going to be on volume. If you look at this exhibit here, you will see that there are 3 entrances to the Arvada Marketplace. They are all along 52nd Avenue. There is only one that allows egress back to Wadsworth from Arvada Marketplace. That is the light on Vance Street. The one that is most directly related to the In-N-Out Burger is a right turn only. It's where Bennett's used to be and where Pier 8 is going to be. It's a right turn only. So in order to get out back to Wadsworth, to go north on Wadsworth, to go south on Wadsworth, they are going to have to go east through the parking lot of the development and get to this. There's a stop sign. There's a 3-way stop. It's when you go through the light southbound on Vance, it is that traffic does not stop. The traffic stops in 3 directions. It stops from going eastbound to turn left across the southbound traffic to get to Vance, to then turn left on that light to get back to Wadsworth. That intersection is already a nightmare. You all already approved a high-volume traffic impact development, which is the Sam's Club Fuel Center, which is also right there on that corner and is also going to have significant traffic impacts. That intersection is already difficult to navigate. It's a 3-way stop, and the southbound traffic. And so, and people coming from North Arvada are going to end up coming down because left turn onto 52nd from Wadsworth, that is a single turn lane.
If you could finish up your comments here.
Okay, and the light is very short. So the traffic that's going to go into In-N-Out Burger southbound from Wadsworth is going to come down Vance, and they are then going to be part of that southbound traffic. And that means that the traffic trying to get back out is going to be blocked. It's not going to be possible.
Thank you.
I'm going to leave the diagram for my sister.
Thank you. And I will now call Ms. Feldman. And again, if you'll state your name and address for the record.
Thank you. My name is Holly Fieldman. My name, H-A-L-I.
Sorry, I couldn't read it.
That's quite all right. I understand. I live at 5360 Newland Street in Arvada, just a block west of Marshall. And I've lived in this neighborhood. Well, I grew up just north of this neighborhood, and now I'm back. I too wanted to address traffic issues in the context partly of safety, which has been a recurring theme tonight in these hearings. Safety, but also livability, walkability, bike rideability, that sort of thing. There are a couple of things that, that my sister didn't have the chance to mention. One is that when you're going northbound on Wadsworth, let's say you just get off the highway or you've come from Wheat Ridge, either way, there is a merge lane that goes, that turns right onto 52nd there. Problem is, if the nearest entrance to In-N-Out Burger fills up, one of the things that my sister has done research on but didn't have a chance to comment on is that the length of vehicles these days has grown considerably. So that you have trucks, Suburbans, that sort of car, that are common cars, at 19, at 20, at even 21 feet. We're not talking trailers, we're talking about just the length of vehicles. So, in other words, the 30-car stacking issue may be optimistic. Not everybody drives compacts anymore. So that increases our concerns that traffic that's turning into In-N-Out Burger will back up onto that nearest street from Wadsworth. There's about 125 feet there we measured between the corner of Wadsworth and that turn in there. If it does that, then they're also going to back up onto the merge lane. And all of this contradicts any sort of walkability, rideability, as much as they do have this lovely, canopied area to sit and eat and enjoy. This is not walkable, and I say it as somebody who walks all the time in cities all the time, and I'm comfortable doing so. This is not going to add to the quality of life in Arvada for those of us who live here. That's just my opinion. Unless this traffic stuff is mitigated, there's also going to be a problem. I've always talked about eastbound 52nd. There will also be a problem from westbound 52nd having to do with that same light at Vance, which is the only way that, well, it's the only safe way that westbound traffic on 52nd can get into that parking lot that goes into the entire Arvada marketplace. One other short comment. We spoke to a number of the businesses already part of Arvada marketplace. The only ones who knew anything about this knew by rumor only. And they were quite upset that they didn't know more in detail, that they hadn't been spoken with, and hadn't had a chance to air their concerns about the impacts upon their own businesses. So I wanted to make sure that that was part of the mention.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your comments.
Thanks for listening.
Yep. Anyone else in council chambers that wishes to speak? Anyone on Zoom? Great. I'll close the public comment portion of this hearing and would invite the applicant to come back up, and if there's anything that you want to address in the public comment that we received.
Thank you. Regarding traffic, and staff may be able to speak to it as well, but we, as a part of our site plan process, we will work through a traffic impact study and evaluate that and work with staff. But the shopping center as a whole has three three access points along 52nd, the right in, right out, right at our development, which from Planning Commission hearing, my understanding is people can exit there, do a U-turn on 52nd. That is legal. That was what was said at Planning Commission. That was verified by staff. Then the full motion signalized access at Vans, and then there's another full motion access at the far east side. So there are lots of options for people to get in and out, no pun intended, of the site. As well as, using Vans to go north. There are different ways. We understand, traffic is a concern, and we will look at that as part of the site plan process with staff. So.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry, public comment portion's closed. I'm sorry, we don't take questions from the floor. Sorry about that. All right, is that all from the applicant?
Yep.
Okay, great. So now I'll close I closed it before, but I'm going to officially close the public comment portion of the, for this particular hearing, and open it now for council comments or questions. Mr. Marriott.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have a couple questions. Two things that just heard from the public comment part, and I'll start with Mr. Devon on the first one. And that was, we heard that the businesses within the Arvada marketplace maybe didn't receive any kind of notification. Can you just tell us why that might have been, or what the notification process is like?
Sure. I would ask Planning Manager Rob Smentana to comment on this, but I believe the notices would have gone to the property owners.
Okay, thank you.
That is correct. Mailed notices would have gone to property owners, but there were signs on the site. There was a sign on, or still are signs on the site on Wadsworth and 52nd, and those have been there since 2 weeks prior to the Planning Commission hearing. So they've been there since late May. So the signs were there in order to notify people who didn't get the written notice of development activity on the site.
Okay, so we did, or the applicant did as we require, which was notification to the property owners. If some property owners didn't pass that notification adequate along to their tenants, that's on them, that's not on the applicant. Okay, sounds good. That's the first thing. The second thing I want to ask about is, it seems to me that within this Arvada marketplace, there's, there's a bunch of different buildings, and there's traffic flow within the Arvada marketplace site. But my impression is that that's all private property, and it's traffic circulation within the private property that's the Arvada marketplace, and that's an issue with the Arvada for the Arvada marketplace to look at and deal with as they entertain these things, and it's not really part of our public streets traffic process. Is that correct?
That's correct, and I can let Jenny or Kyle give a little more information if they feel necessary. But yes, we only really look at where there's an interaction with a public street, as long as the proposal does not affect public right-of-way, public access. It's really a private site issue.
Okay, so stuff that's internal to the site is really the property owner's domain, and their opportunity or responsibility to modify how traffic circulates within their site to come up with the best outcomes for their tenants or their own businesses or whatnot.
That's correct.
Okay, all right, got it. I want to make just a comment about the traffic. Having lived right there for quite a long time, I remember when the Arvada marketplace was built, and it's been several different. It's ebbed and flowed over the years. At times, it's been quite busy. At other times, quite unbusy. It's enjoyed a renaissance of late, which I think is a good thing. To me, seems like the traffic flow flows well in and out of the site itself. And so I guess I wanted to ask to our city team that looks at the traffic flow of this, do you guys still feel that that's the case, that the traffic exiting and entering the site, regardless of where they're going in the site, that we have adequate level of service there?
Sure, I'll answer that for you, Councilmember Marriott. We will evaluate all of the access points onto 52nd Avenue as part of the full traffic study. We, at this point, feel that those access points are working well. Not only are we going to review those as part of the traffic study for the final product of In-N-Out, but we will also look at their traffic control plans when they submit those through the different various stages. You know, as the applicant spoke of, they bring in an all-star team and put together a special traffic control plan for their opening. So, for example, we'll take a look at that and make sure that we don't see any negative impacts on our roadways, and we aren't allowing them to create any dangerous situations because of anything that they're proposing in those traffic control plans.
Okay. And then do we have the ability as that's, you know, when and if this restaurant were to open up and they were to implement their traffic plan, if it doesn't work out the way they may have planned or predicted, or it's quite busier than they thought, or maybe not as busy as they thought, do we have the ability for those things to be kind of changed on the fly as we see exactly what's happening on the ground?
Absolutely. Once they submit that traffic control plan, our engineers will review that, and then our inspectors will also be on site making sure that that is implemented correctly, and if there's problems in the field, we will suggest modifications and work with their engineers to resolve any conflicts or problems that we see.
Okay, great, thank you. And then I have a question for, I think it was Ms. Sanchez. If you don't mind, come on up, and I'd like to just ask you kind of a question as well. You had mentioned that you will have your own people on site doing traffic directing, I guess, to ensure that everything works well, and that would be for the first week or more. I'm assuming you have some metric by which you judge how long that needs to happen and when it might need to be, you know, whether it might need to be extended or discontinued.
So usually, as the development manager, I will do the hiring and working with city with traffic plan. And after opening weekend, I'm checking in with operations, and that's with our all-star team, and they'll let us know. I think what they really consider is customer safety and public safety when we plan to pull off the flaggers. That's so important to us when we're doing site planning, when we're talking about pedestrian access, crossing our drive-through lanes, things like that, which, you know, as a company, we don't always agree with when the city's asking us to put pedestrian crossing across our drive-through lane or put a stop sign somewhere. We kind of get trumped on that sometimes, but I mean, we can be out there sometimes 8 months. We've had some traffic control guys out there, and that's over and above our normal In-N-Out associates, which are on site.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate it.
Yep.
Okay, that's all I have, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pfeiffer.
John kind of hit some of those, but let's stick with access for right now, the egress, ingress, because obviously the one where I work all day long is an organization called CDOT, which owns that intersection there and the off-ramp of 76, I-70 and I-76. And knowing that the highest traffic count in the Front Range is that intersection, little concerned about what we're doing with access and queuing, even if it's short-term or long-term. Knowing the condition of that intersection and being 150 feet to that first ingress, wondering, are you collaborating with the state, since the state owns that intersection? And then what are the plans? I mean, because we could talk about stacking here. It's not going to work their first month or two. We know that. And I'm not sure when it will go down. And then how you look at, we're all human. We all do stupid things. They're not going to do whatever your flaggers wanted to do. They're just going to make some chaos in that intersection. So at the end of the day, what is our mitigation to address that 100-foot ingress right there? Close it?
So to answer the first part of your question, yes, we will coordinate with CDOT. They're a referral agency through the planning process, but we will also coordinate with them at the traffic control. Knowing what CDOT always tells us, CDOT will say you cannot stack in CDOT right-of-way. So we are fully anticipating that comment, and we've made the developer well aware of that as well. And
there'll be mitigation around that? Because,
there will be mitigation
around
that.
As soon as they're stacking, there has to be, because it's such high accidents, I'm assuming there's going to have to be some sort of thing that they have to be held accountable to move that traffic faster, differently, better, quicker.
And that's part of their all-star plan up front, is to come up with a traffic queuing analysis or queuing plan that will keep that traffic off of arterial roadways, including Wadsworth.
The highway.
Yeah, and we'll work with them on what that alignment looks like so that we don't have conflicts, that those are reduced. All of the traffic will be out of the intersection of 52nd and Wadsworth and minimized at other city locations.
And through that exercise, will you be working on timing of those lights and some other things? Because there's already problems with those lights today. I could just only see that growing. So to assist the applicant, are we going to be evaluating that as well and collaborating with that as well?
Yes, we'll ask the applicant to do some of that initial analysis, but we'll collaborate with them on the intersection of 52nd and Vance. 52nd and Wadsworth, we will coordinate with CDOT on. CDOT is the authority on the timing of that signal.
Yeah, because I could just see people coming from the interstate, and so your left movement is always going to be a problem. And so, you know, I guess we can only see what happens. So yeah, traffic control, we talked about it. You have temporary. What about long-term? The only question I have around long-term around this issue is, how about if it goes past, you know, their ability to sustain traffic control? Are we going to have, to John's point, are we going to have the ability to say, you know what, we're going to close this access point right there at where Bennett's was and stuff, the you know, right in, right out, just to force the queuing to get onto private property at Vance and then go in? Are
Absolutely.
those the things, because I want to make sure we leave that ability within our agreements with the applicant that could close.
Yes, and we've discussed that with the applicant, and you know, as she mentioned, when Ms. Sanchez mentioned, when they come in with their all-star team, they'll pull a special traffic control permit for that opening scenario. We will ensure that that permit is not closed out until we are satisfied that the traffic is under control, queued on site, and no effects to any of the public right-of-way.
Okay, and then knowing that queuing and keeping the walkability, any improvements on that right in, right out right there that we can, like a raised walk path on that right in, right out, just to slow cars around so that the walkability to the facility is maintained?
That's something we can evaluate during the site plan and the traffic impact analysis plan. We'll ask them to evaluate pedestrian safety, as that is a pedestrian priority street, as well as bike safety.
Okay, yeah, I'm worried about everyone trying to get in and then not letting folks through. And then I think my last question for this is around next steps. Could you maybe refresh us next steps after we do these, you know, review of the modification? What's the next steps for them? Are they coming back for a public hearing? Is it administratively approved? Figured maybe we can educate some of our public on that and next steps.
Sure. Assuming that you approve some or all of these major modifications and they feel comfortable with whatever the decision is, they can come back with a site plan that would be reviewed administratively. The director can make the decision as to whether to approve that or not. But there's obviously no guarantee. If we get a traffic study that says this is going to create too many problems and it can't be mitigated, the director then has the option of denying the application. If that were the case, it could be then appealed to council. But a lot of things depend on you know, where the applicant is and what the information is we get at that site plan level.
And council has the right to call this up if we wanted to as well?
Under the proposed code changes, that would be an option.
Okay, well, maybe we should get those codes in here so we can, because this one would be one that could be possibly called up to council to be reviewed. I would think so. Darn.
Yeah, the land development code amendments are proposed to come to you on August 15th. I don't believe that the applicant will probably have the time to get an application in before that gets reviewed by you.
Not that that would happen, but I think that this is exactly why we want that kind of ability from council to call up certain ones that might be more impacting than what should be administrative review. What was that, Ryan?
Oh, we switched the land development code coming to city council to, I think it's actually September 19th. And the reason why is because we had both Howard Ranch and the land development code on August 15th, and we just felt that that was too big of a bite. So we split the baby.
Why would you ever do that?
You know, we want to respect your time.
We don't ever go
and your-
past 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. So why don't you give us one of those?
So we're giving you Howard Ranch, and then we'll do the land development code at the next meeting.
Okay, thank you for sharing. That's all the questions I had. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pfeiffer. Ms. Simpson.
Thank you. So a great deal of my questions were covered by Councilmember Marriott and Councilmember Pfeiffer. In particular, the in and out onto 52nd concerns me as somebody who visits that shopping center fairly frequently. I have a crafter daughter, and they have the Michaels. And so I can tell you right now, the Vance in and out can be challenging. There's a lot of cutting through that happens in that parking lot, and I understand it is private property, but at the same time, the owner doesn't necessarily, the other business owners don't necessarily get a vote, we do. And so I want us to be very, very cognizant of that traffic control and perhaps some sort of barrier to prevent cut-throughs of the parking lot. I don't know, but I want to be very cognizant because that parking lot can be quite a disaster. And particularly if we have Pier 8 restaurant going in as well at the Red Robin site, we're going to have increased traffic flow right along that north side. The in and out as well on 52nd, as we noted, it's a right in, right out. I don't know if U-turns on 52nd, because those will be happening a lot. Right now, they're legal, they're in small numbers. I don't know if inviting that to become a regular occurrence all day is a great idea. Perhaps there is a way we can better in and out that entrance. If it's, I don't know if it's a second light. I hate to interrupt traffic flow on 52nd, but I would rather people be safe than reckless. And we just have to account for human behavior when we look at all of this. In terms of the 30-car stacking, I think that's largely good. I definitely do not think that will be enough for the opening, but we're all very aware that that is not going to be enough for the opening. I believe Aurora had 14-hour lines. Hopefully we will not be that high. I would be curious if the applicant knows these numbers for the Belmar location, which has been open for 2 years now. What is the consistent traffic flow volume there, and particularly around the rush hours, lunch hour, dinner hour? Is the 30, does that location also have 30-car ability, and is it frequently going out of it now that that location has been open a while?
Meeting of the minds, we don't know the exact numbers, but that Lakewood store does have less stacking than this one. We think it's about 25 at that store. I would say you mentioned Aurora, that was, the big opening of In and Out coming into the state. So we haven't seen that news headline on any of the subsequent ones that have opened. So I think your statement of, yes, there'll hopefully for everybody be a rush right at the beginning, and then it will die down to normal, operating activity after that. So.
And with the Belmar location, is it frequently within its 25 lanes, or does it ever back out now that that site's been open for 2 years?
I don't know that we have that information exactly about that store specifically.
No worries. The reason we ask is Lakewood and Arvada are fairly similar populations, interests, and whatnot. So it'd be great to have that kind of data to see how the traffic is working down there, because we'll likely expect similar patterns here in Arvada. And so.
Can I
yes,
weigh
absolutely.
in on that from the staff standpoint?
Absolutely.
We did speak with Lakewood. I reached out to the planning and engineering director in Lakewood, and they are at a point where they are no longer requiring additional traffic control off of their site. They are typically stacked within their site. On rare occasions, they exceed, but it backs onto like a private drive.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. And so let's see here. Pedestrian access, I believe we've talked about that. And then traffic. Where's the fuel center in relation to this site?
Let me get my bearings straight here. The fueling center is located kind of when you come in the Vance entrance. It's directly south of there and off to the east.
Okay,
southeast.
so it's off to the east and not to the west. That's good.
Correct.
That'll be
Yeah.
diverting traffics in different directions. So that's all I really had. And then my one thought for the staff is, as we look at this, I realize the In-N-Out Burger design is very iconic, but the sharp white doesn't match the rest of this shopping center. It's very incongruous. I know we had special design from Costco when they came to town. So as we're looking at design elements, if there's anything we can do to just make the visual flow a little bit easier on the eye, I would very much appreciate that as you're working through this process. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mormon.
Thank you, Mr. Pro Tem. So I guess I have two issues that I wanted to have addressed, and I'll start with the MXT zoning. So I imagine this has directly related to staff or the Arvada team helping to address this. So can you explain a little bit for me the history of this zoning? As I gather, it's something relatively new. Is that correct? And so I want to specifically know how it relates to the marketplace in particular, because it comes with some specifics, especially around an urban environment. And so if you can speak to that context, because I feel like, we're creating some modifications, exemptions that are moving us away from that vision of that urban environment, especially in this exemption. So can you talk a little bit about that history?
Sure. The MXT zoning was placed on the property as part of the Land Development Code rewrite in 2020 when we updated the zoning throughout the city as part of that project. The intent was to kind of try to tie Old Town and the transit center to the freeway access with I-70, I-76. There's frequent bus service along Wadsworth. So the intent was really to make that more of a transit-oriented area. So while this proposal does not match that intent, it does match the intent of the existing shopping center or the character of the existing shopping center. One thing I can mention, though, is we have been going through the process of doing a sub-area plan for the new town area, so that area south of the tracks down to I-70 along Wadsworth. And some of the feedback that we've been getting is that we may have gone a little too far away from the transit station with the MXT zoning. And so there may be a recommendation out of that plan to look at the potential of rezoning this area, maybe to an urban, which is less intense development, a little more flexible in terms of the zoning. But that is one thing that you'll see as we go through the sub-area planning process. We'll have a workshop on that coming up here soon. So we'll be able to get into a little more detail there. But the zoning is in place, and this is a proposal that obviously has major modifications in order to fit into the shopping center that don't comply with that MXT zoning.
Because with the concept of a more urban feel with buildings closer to the street and sidewalks, so it's more pedestrian friendly and accessible, there isn't a whole lot of that already occurring along that corridor. Is that correct?
That's correct, unless you're up by the transit station with the Old Town residences and the TOD development that's taking place there, but it is not progressed further south yet.
So we're in essence kind of giving up on that idea then for this particular area. It feels to me, and I'm just, and what your statement you just made about looking at rezoning it in a different way now, correct?
Correct. Again, it would still allow the same mix of uses on the site. It may not be as dense or as pedestrian oriented. But given the location at one of the busiest, if not the busiest intersections in the state, it has, I think 59,000 vehicles a day on Wadsworth, that this, in retrospect, this may have not been the best zoning for this area. But again, we're doing more study into that, and we'll bring that to you as part of the sub-area planning elements.
Well, given all that, I am concerned about pedestrian and bicycle access to this area, which is already obviously a significant problem. And how do we address that in a way that we increase that access, make it safer for other alternative modes other than single occupancy vehicles? you know, and making this modification moves us away from, moves us away from that direction of trying to improve that. So what do you see some specific to helping with bicycle and pedestrian and, you know, ADA compliance too is another key part that we're very focused on trying to address. What, if we approve this modification tonight and allow this to go forward, how will we as a city help us keep that as a goal to make sure that accessibility piece is there?
Sure. One of the things we have been looking at is really utilizing more of the Vance Street and that connection to Old Wadsworth at 53rd as that being the more prominent pedestrian path down to get to the shopping center, the Arvada Marketplace area and the retail in that area. The lighter volumes on the street. It has some ability to be more pedestrian friendly. And it gets people across Wadsworth at a slightly narrower width of Wadsworth. So, you know, that's another element that we're looking at as part of that sub-area plan. There's just, I would maybe rely on Jenny or Kyle, but there's not a lot that we can do at 52nd and Wadsworth just because of the major intersection status there. There's not a lot of improvements that you can do to make it any more pedestrian friendly unless you build a pedestrian bridge or something along those lines.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to move to my second issue, and that is, you know, around the traffic flow. Can you speak specifically to how these modification changes affect traffic flow?
Obviously, we've heard short-term that there will be some impact, but we did get information, I believe it was for their Thornton location, that post-opening, you know, the short-term kind of attraction, the volumes actually go down to about what that Chick-fil-A that's currently there sees on a daily basis. So it looks like about 1,900 trips a day. So that's comparable to the Chick-fil-A there. And I would mention that the stacking there is about half of the stacking that they're looking at this site. So in terms of getting people off the major roadways, this site is going to be better in that situation versus the Chick-fil-A where the drive-through traffic backs up into the parking lot and can create some problems. Again, this site will have twice the stacking that one does. So hopefully that helps mitigate the situation.
Okay, thank you. And I guess my final question is around air pollution and air quality. So under our approval criteria for major modifications for number 4, it's about significant adverse impact on health and safety, and that can include air pollution. So is that something that was looked at?
That's part of what the council can consider in making this decision. We don't have any specific regulations in our codes regarding that. But again, in terms of the volume of vehicles that are at that intersection, there will be, I mean, there are air quality issues, and I'm not going to downplay those, but the amount of vehicles that are associated with this site in comparison to the vehicles that are already stopped waiting for signals at the intersection there, it is a fairly small amount.
Well, I hear that, but I'm looking at, 30 stacking vehicles, idling. That has air quality implications. Yes.
If I may, Councilmember Moorman, yes. Those criteria are very specific to the actual modifications. The modification, there is no modification to the number of stacking. The modification regarding stacking is just that it would be allowed in the front setback. So the number of vehicles is actually not a consideration that you're being asked to consider tonight. So what you're describing, while that could be linked to that criteria, it's not one of the modifications that they're requesting. So what really we need to look at each modification and then apply those criteria to that modification, not the criteria to the project as a whole. That will happen at the site plan.
Okay.
And as Councilmember Pfeiffer mentioned, there is a proposed call-up amendment to our LDC that would allow you to call it up even before the appeal process. But something like environmental concerns, because that's not directly related to one of the modifications that they're requesting, it's really not connected to anything that's before you tonight.
No, I appreciate that, and I just want to flag that as we're moving forward.
Absolutely.
I think it's something we really need to be looking at.
And I agree, and I think all the traffic concerns, all of those staff obviously is taking into consideration, because if you chose not to call it up, it's something that the director needs to know your opinions and what you're looking for so that he can take that into consideration.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You're on mute.
Mr. Mormon, with all due respect, if we're only concerned about health, then we shouldn't allow any fast food restaurants, because certainly they're not good for our hearts. From the app in the metro area, and how many are planned?
There's currently 7 with an 8th under construction right now in Denver.
Okay, so, you know, we're not the first game in town for this, and therefore, with all due respect to your companies, we're not going to have that pent-up demand to come into Arvada as we did with the first one in, where was it, Aurora?
Right.
I certainly understand there's going to be some pent-up demand, and there's going to be a great boon at the beginning, but do you believe that the number of stores in the metro area has some impact upon how much demand we're going to have at our location?
I think that definitely does. I mean, we've seen it with all of the ones that have been opening. So, I mean, you mentioned the Aurora lines that we had, and like I mentioned, we haven't seen that on any other store since then. So I think the more that come around town, you know, we're going to see less and less, you know, craziness for longer.
Yeah, I heard as part of the staff presentation before your presentation that there are some covenants within this development that prohibit two-story structures. Is that correct?
Yeah, it limits the height of those outparcel areas to 25 feet maximum, which would prohibit that.
Okay. I'll reserve the rest of my comments for the motions. I have no other questions.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Smith.
Thank you. Just, I think, 2, maybe 3 questions. So, when you talked about having creative designs with the screens and canopies, I'm not sure how that is a creative design for mitigating those efforts. It seems like kind of a traditional way of mitigating that challenge. So I'm just wondering, did the team think about other ways of trying to mitigate some of those concerns, aside from screens?
I think the canopy with the colonnades that In-N-Out does are a very unique way. That's not something that we see on typical fast food users, to bring a whole entire structure out and over and create, you know, a colonnade along the road there. And on top of that, we took that and extended that from what we've done on some of the other stores so that it is specific to Arvada and the need along Wadsworth and 52nd both.
Okay, thanks. The other is, we talked about wanting to encourage the pedestrian-oriented streets and having more walkability and activation, but when we look at that kind of an aerial view, we're seeing a parking lot, and then a wraparound drive-through, and then a major intersection and highway off-ramp. So I'm not seeing how we're putting together any sort of pedestrian-focused street ambiance in this environment and the way it's mocked up.
Yeah, I mean, I think the city has created a pedestrian area right there along 52nd and Wadsworth, right there at the corner. You guys have a feature right there at the corner already that we're tying into. And we are bringing pedestrian access off of that along Wadsworth that brings you into the site and gets you to the front of the store, you know, as quickly as possible, given ADA requirements. And then the pedestrian focus along 52nd, we've got screen walls that have been proposed along there to help soften that edge with landscaping and the walls so that you're not just right on the drive-through lane. So that existing sidewalk along 52nd will continue with those added features, you know, that would allow for the drive-through use and the pedestrians to both operate there.
Thank you.
Okay, I think I'm the last one to have, I just have two questions. And first will be of the team. With regards to the request for modification around the transparency, if I understand transparency based on how it's written here, it's to incorporate windows and doors and openings to induce excitement from the outside to the inside. And the comment from the applicant along the archways that we're staring at a blank canvas white wall, how does that increase that transparency?
It does give a three-dimensional look to it, which, you know, helps a little bit. But the staff condition that we do recommend and that the Planning Commission recommended was that we still be able to work with them on that, because the code does allow things like murals, some spandrel glass, or advertising to kind of help break up that wall as well. And so we would like your approval to continue to work with them on those elements.
Okay, thank you. That answers that question perfectly. My second question, again, probably, sorry, is for our team. Looking at the three different entrances, the far east entrance that is a full access intersection but is not signalized, are there specific warrants that would merit a signalized intersection there at some point in time? Or how do we think about that with that traffic coming from the private property onto our streets?
So we do analyze signal warrants at all of our intersections regularly as staff, and we would require it of developers if we felt that there may be a need that a warrant would be justified. So in the case of the intersection of Salisbury and 52nd Avenue, which is the farthest east, we don't believe that that would meet a signal warrant at that location. So we will look at things like the stacking in the turn lane to make sure that that's adequate, but we don't believe that a signal at that location would be warranted or justified.
Okay. Thank you very much. Mr. Marriott.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to make a motion if everyone's had their questions answered.
I believe that everyone has their questions answered, and just so you know, we'll obviously do.
I got you.
Perfect, thank you. You're a veteran.
Okay, so I move that the major modification from the Land Development Code, subsection 4-5-3-6 or C.2, to allow vehicles stacking in the side setback when the LDC prohibits vehicle stacking in the front and side street setbacks generally located at 7370 West 52nd Avenue in the city of Arvada, Colorado, be approved. This motion is based on findings of fact adopted by the Planning Commission. And I'll make just a short comment on this one. I totally understand why we might have that in our code. I also understand why this is a unique situation. And I believe that the proposal that these applicant has made is the best proposal to handle a driveway like they have, and I would compliment both them and our city team on being creative with how to make kind of this volume of drive-through work in a site like this. So I'll certainly be voting yes on this one.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, you have your hand up.
I do. I will be supporting the motion. I think that this is an appropriate way to deal with their volume. I was very pleased to hear that this has got about double the stacking ability as what is at the Chick-fil-A. So I think it is an appropriate response. And I go back to something that was said previously in terms of the whole zoning for this area. I think we need to look at what is truly already there, and what these modifications that are being requested, and I'll say it now versus having to say it on every motion, is that this is not a major modification from what is already there. It's the reality. It's the type of development we have. Frankly, this thing was in the depths of being a dying shopping center. And because a developer came in, made some major changes, that opened it up some, that brought in some great new tenants. It revitalized what was something that was in its death throes, frankly. And we had to recognize that this is an auto urban type of development area, and it's going to stay that way. Frankly, this is not a pedestrian-friendly area. It's not an area where you're going to have a lot of biking or pedestrian use. It is auto-oriented. And we have to accept that that's what it is, and we have to embrace that that is what it is, because it's a great economic engine for our community. So I will certainly be supporting the motion.
Thank you. Ms. Simpson.
Thank you. So since we are looking tonight at major modifications for this site plan, I will be supporting the motion. I will be looking forward to hearing what the traffic solutions are. I think the traffic stacking is a good solution to keep cars out of the roadway. With the opening aside, we all know that's going to be a thing. But I look forward to seeing what the final plans will be, particularly in regards to the parking lot itself, and maybe working with the owner of the shopping center just on looking at how that traffic flow will work. And then potentially, I'm really excited about the ideas of the murals. I know that's unrelated to this, but in terms of the transparency, it is. So yeah, I will be supporting it for this, but we'll be interested to see what happens in terms of the final plan and whether or not this results in an appeal or a call-up. So for those in the neighborhood who are concerned about this, know that this is not the final step. This is a design step. And thank you, everybody, for their hard work so far. I look forward to seeing where this goes.
Thank you. Mr. Mormon.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Jones. I will be supporting the modification as well. However, I do encourage the applicant and the city staff to work very hard on a couple of the issues that have been raised this evening as we move forward. Traffic obviously being number one. And then, as I mentioned, how that also ties into air quality issues. And then the accessibility issue and multimodal piece. While yes, this is a car-centric area, there certainly are creative and innovative ways to create greater access for bicyclists and pedestrians, even in a car-centric area. And so I know it can be done, and encourage the applicant and the city to be working on that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Pfeiffer.
Thank you, and I'll be supporting it as well. I would encourage staff and the team and the applicant to be a little bit sensitive around adverse effects to the other businesses, because we did not talk about that. But if that intersection is impeded, that impedes Costco or Home Depot or any of the other businesses, or what is it, Pier 8, or any of the other ones that are coming in, I think we need to be making sure we're collaborating as partners and that we work together to solve that. So you're a good neighbor, because we do believe in being neighborly with each other, that you are not intentionally adversely affecting our other businesses. It is a very large revenue generating for our city, this one intersection, and any other adverse effects to just sell burgers, I think it would draw a lot of attention from our folks who can't get to the other businesses. So I just ask that we be very sensitive around that, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mormon and Mr. Pfeiffer, if you'd cast your votes. So with that, I also support this proposal for this particular major modification, and with the mayor's affirmative vote. Oops. I'm sorry. Did you have your light on?
Yeah. Oh, no, I didn't have my light on. Sorry.
I'm sorry. That passes 6-1 with Ms. Smith voting no. I apologize for
Just to follow up, do I need to give a reason, or because it passed, are we okay?
It's up to you, Councilmember Smith. You can speak to the motion if you choose to do so, but it's up to you.
Okay. Then I'm good.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. I move that major modification for the Land Development Code subsection 2-1-5-3.f to allow a 32.5% building facade located within the frontage zone when the LDC requires a 60% building facade to be located within the frontage zone, generally located at 7370 West 52nd Avenue in the city of Arvada, Colorado, be approved. This motion is based on findings of fact adopted by the Planning Commission.
Thank you very much. Mr. Mayor, do you have any comments before I call for your vote?
Nope, I vote yes.
Thank you. And with that, that passes 7-0. Go ahead, Mr. Marriott.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor. I move that the major modification from the Land Development Code, subsection 5-1-3-1, to allow a single usable floor on a pedestrian priority street when the LDC requires 2 usable floors on a pedestrian priority street, generally located at 7370 West 52nd Avenue in the city of Arvada, Colorado, be approved. This motion is based on the findings of fact adopted by the Planning Commission.
Thank you. Motions for approval. Mr. Mayor, do you have any comments?
No, I vote yes.
Thank you. And with that, that passes 6-1 with Ms. Smith voting no. Go ahead, Mr. Marriott.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor. I move that the major modification from the Land Development Code, subsection 5-1-6-2.B.3.C, to allow a drive-through lane not to be fully enclosed within the envelope of the building and with one visible drive-through through a window on a public street when the LDC requires a drive-through lane to be fully enclosed within the envelope of the building with drive-through windows not visible to public streets, generally located at 7370 West 52nd Avenue in the city of Arvada, Colorado, be approved. This motion is based on the findings of fact adopted by the Planning Commission.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I have no comments and vote yes.
Thank you. With that, that passes 6-1 with Ms. Smith voting no.
Okay, and thank you, Your Honor. I move that a major modification from the Land Development Code, subsection 5-1-2-6-F, requiring transparency for buildings located within a frontage zone generally located at 7370 West 52nd Avenue in the city of Arvada, Colorado, be approved, subject to the following condition. Additional architectural elements such as spandrel glass windows and/or a mural be provided on the Wadsworth Boulevard building elevation to increase perceived transparency as required by subsection 5-1-2-6F of the LDC. These enhancements shall be included with the final site plan application.
Thank you. And I'll just, again, as I stated before with transparency, I appreciate that amendment that the Planning Commission made, and would just ask everybody to think thoughtfully as you think about transparency and what that might look like. And for that, I will also be supporting Mr. Mayor.
Yes, I support and vote yes.
Thank you. And that passes 7-0. Thank you very much for the work that you've done tonight in bringing in and out to the community, at least for this phase. I know there's still a lot of work that must be done, and we look forward to you working with our team to bring the best possible product available. Thank you. Next on the agenda is our second public comment portion. Anyone in council chambers wishing to speak to council during this public comment portion? Seeing none, I'll close the second public comment portion and open it up to, or I'm sorry, Ms. Rush, do we have anybody on Zoom? Okay, thank you. And open it up to council reports. Mr. Marriott.
Thank you, Your Honor. I just wanted to make one quick one. Last week, I was really privileged to get to attend the ribbon cutting to Pilatus Aircraft's new paint facility up at the Rocky Mountain Metro Airport. Pilatus Aircraft is a real interesting regional business. While not located in Arvada, it does provide 150 jobs within the region, and certainly some of our Arvada residents are employees there. This company builds 2 products, a turboprop and a business jet in Switzerland is where they do the major building, and then they fly them to the United States in kind of raw form, where they're outfitted with avionics, interiors, and painted to the customer's needs. And it's an incredible facility they have up there, very high-tech facility, the way they outfit these aircraft. I was particularly impressed that they have a very large apprenticeship program, and they work with some of the local trade schools with their opportunities for young people to enter into the aerospace industry in this way. And it was a great event. It's a beautiful facility, just an amazing facility, and I want to congratulate them on their expansion and really give Jeffco EDC kudos for assisting with this and bringing these real high-quality, high-paying aerospace jobs to our county and to within our community where certainly some of our residents live. So thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Simpson.
Thank you. I just wanted to announce that this Saturday from 9:30 to 11 a.m. on Zoom, we will be hosting the Northern Jefferson County Town Hall. I host this in conjunction with Commissioner Tracy Kraft Tharp of Jefferson County, as well as Westminster City Councilor Sarah Nurmela. It should be a really good one. This week we're going to be talking about homelessness issue as it relates to multiple different factors, including crime, affordability, mental health, a few other things. We will be having a presentation from the county lead on this issue, as well as then a panel discussion, including accepting audience Q&A. We'll have a member of the Arvada Police Department's core team joining us, which is really important, as the core team often are the first line that interacts with this community. We'll have Westminster's housing navigator and the executive director of Family Tree, who is operating a affordable housing transitional community here in Arvada, as well as a citizen activist joining us to help answer questions on what citizens can do. This is a pretty important issue, not only for Arvada and not even our region, nationwide. This has become kind of a national crisis. It's certainly by no means limited to us, and it touches a lot of factors here in Arvada. So I'll have the Zoom information up on my social media, my Facebook page coming up in a day or two, and the city of Arvada will also be sharing that, and thanks to our team. So I hope, even though that's a great topic for a Saturday morning, I hope a lot of people will come out and join us for that important discussion.
Thank you. Mr. Mormon.
Thank you, Pro Tem Jones. I have 3 announcements to share. One is from the Sustainability Advisory Committee. We are very excited to report, this is in joint with the Festivals Commission, that we had our first zero waste event festival, which was Arvada on Tap. And we diverted between 60 and 70% of the waste. So that means 60-70% of the waste that was produced was recycled or composted. And I attended the event, and it was very exciting to see the recycling and composting that was going on, and especially how the vendors all participated and had compostable utensils and cups that were being used. So I was very appreciative to see that and excited to see us move forward with zero waste events, and hope that we have more of those in the future. My second announcement is on July 30th, it's the Saturday. From 12 to 2, Councilwoman Smith and I will be hosting a potluck picnic at Volunteer Firefighters Park. I will be baking pies, and we'll be providing beverages and include folks to come and join in the fun and just share what's on your mind, and we would love to see you. And then my final comment is in regards to some of the public comment this evening about and concerns about public safety, which I think the rest of council take very seriously. And one of the requests that I've made of the Arvada team is to look into some of the state funding that's going to be made available very soon, and helping our police and helping us look at mental health issues and also housing as well. So I think there's going to be some opportunities there to help us proactively address some of those concerns. So just wanted to bring that up as in response. Thank you.
Thank you. And I understand you're like a professional baker, so go to the park and get some pie. Mr. Pfeiffer.
Let me go to your guys' party. I just want to say, just bring a Whataburger next time too, you know. Us Texans like that too. So we just want to put it right next door would be great.
Thank you. And I have one thing, and then I'll let the mayor have the last comment on council updates. This week, Freedom Street Social up in Candela's opened, which is an amazing, I'm going to just put it in quotes, food hall. It's not a food hall, it's a gathering place for people to go and eat food and drink beverages. And so I would just encourage you, if you haven't checked it out, to go check it out. It's an amazing facility. We appreciate all of the business owners in Arvada who choose to take risks and bring their businesses and open businesses for us to frequent often. So with that, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you for running tonight's meeting. I want to thank council and city staff and residents of Arvada who have expressed concern over my mother I am back in Southern Illinois with her right now. I am very pleased to report that she is doing remarkably better. We frankly thought we were going to lose her, and she has made a remarkable comeback, so much so that I'll be able to start heading home tomorrow in time to be back in Arvada for Taste of Arvada on Thursday evening. I encourage everybody to come out for that. It's a great, great event. But thank you all for the concern you've expressed, and your thoughts and prayers have really helped.
Thank you very much, and safe travels to you and your wife on your way home. Mr. Devon.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, next Monday we will be discussing utilities financial strategies in our workshop associated with the master plan work that we've been doing to help address our utilities infrastructure.
Great. Ms. Morris, do you have anything for us tonight?
I don't. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you very much, and thanks for your help this evening, and we are adjourned.